Hey guys, tonight we begin with something colder than your ex's heart and darker than your last utility bill. Winter as a coal miner in northern England. Not the romanticised industrial revolution you learned about in school. Not some quaint Dickensian Christmas scene. I mean the real, actual coal miners, covered in soot, coughing up black phlegm, and freezing their asses off in conditions that would make a medieval peasant say, "You know what? I'm good." So before you get comfortable, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim those lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's pause for a second. Have you ever wondered what it was like to wake up before dawn in a one-room house with 7 other people and no heating? Have you thought about what it feels like to descend hundreds of feet underground into complete darkness, knowing full well you might not come back up? Did coal miners ever get warm? What did they eat when everything was rationed and expensive? How did they bathe when water was freezing and bathtubs were a luxury? Could you survive a single shift crawling through tunnels so narrow you can't stand up, hacking away at rock with nothing but a pickaxe and a flickering candle? Would you last a week sleeping in damp wool clothes that never fully dried, or would you accidentally freeze to death in your own bed? And now, congratulations, you've just woken up in northern England. The year is 1880, it's 4 a.m, pitch black, absolutely freezing, and you can see your breath inside your own house. Your entire body aches from yesterday's shift, your lungs feel like someone stuffed them with sandpaper, and in about 30 minutes you'll be descending into hell. Good luck. Let's start with where you live. And I use the word live generously because survive might be more accurate. Your home is a cramped 2-room terraced house made of brick and wishful thinking. It's attached to 6 other identical houses on both sides, creating a grey, soot-covered row that looks like someone designed misery and then mass-produced it. The entire structure is about 15 feet wide, that's it. 15 feet to contain your entire existence. Downstairs is one room that serves as kitchen, dining room, living room, and occasional bathroom. Upstairs is a bedroom where you, your spouse, and anywhere from 3 to 7 children all sleep together like sardines in a very depressing tin. There's no hallway because hallways are for people with space, and you, my friend, have none. The walls are thin, so thin you can hear your neighbour coughing 3 houses down. You know exactly when the Johnsons have an argument, when the Smiths' baby's crying, and when old Mr. Patterson's bowels are acting up. Privacy is a fairy tale told to rich people. You're living in an acoustic nightmare where everyone's business is everyone's business, whether you like it or not. The floor downstairs is flagstone, which sounds almost elegant until you realise it's just flat rocks that are always cold, always damp, and excellent at conducting every bit of winter chill directly into your bones. Some families put down rag rugs, homemade things cobbled together from scraps, but they're constantly wet from the condensation that drips down the walls. Yes, the walls sweat. Your house perspires misery. Speaking of walls, they're bare brick on the inside because plaster costs money, and you don't have any. The brick is porous, which means it absorbs moisture like a sponge. In winter, frost forms on the interior walls, creating these almost beautiful patterns of ice crystals. It would be lovely if it weren't a stark reminder that your home has the insulating properties of a sieve. The windows are small, single-pane affairs that rattle in their frames whenever the wind picks up, and the wind always picks up. This is northern England. The wind is a permanent resident, more reliable than the postal service. The glass is often cracked, patched with newspaper or rags stuffed into the gaps. Some families can't afford glass at all, and just nail boards over the window holes in winter, choosing darkness over frostbite. Let's talk about heating. There's one fireplace downstairs, a sooty brick hole in the wall that's supposed to warm the entire house. It doesn't. What it does is create a small zone of tolerable temperature within about 3 feet of the flames, while the rest of the house remains an icebox. The fire runs on coal, obviously, because you're a coal miner. The irony is thick. You spend all day digging coal out of the earth, and yet you can barely afford to burn enough to keep your children from shivering. Coal costs money. Even though you mine it, even though your labour literally extracts it from the ground, you still have to buy it. The coal company sells it back to you at prices that eat through your wages like acid through cloth, so you ration it. You light the fire in the evening when everyone's home, and you let it die at night because you can't afford to keep it burning while you sleep. This means you wake up every morning in a house that's barely warmer than the street outside. The furniture is minimal and rough. A wooden table with benches, a few stools, maybe a chair if you're lucky. Everything is homemade or hand-me-down, scarred and worn from years of use. The table wobbles. The stools have splinters. Nothing matches because nothing was ever meant to. You don't decorate. You don't have throw pillows or curtains or any of the things that make a house feel like a home. You have walls, a roof that mostly works, and a constant battle against the cold. Upstairs, the bedroom is even smaller than the room below. One bed, maybe two if the family is large enough to warrant it. The children pile in together, sharing blankets, sharing warmth, sharing every illness that makes its way through the household. The bed is a wooden frame with a straw mattress, lumpy and rustling with every movement. Sometimes the straw gets damp and starts to rot, filling the room with a musty organic smell that mingles with the coal smoke that permeates every surface. Blankets are wool, if you can afford them, heavy, scratchy, and never quite clean. They smell like smoke and sweat and the general funk of bodies that don't get washed often enough. In the deepest part of winter, you pile everything on top of the bed. Coats, spare clothes, even rags, anything to add another layer between you and the cold that seeps through the roof tiles. And that roof. Oh, that roof. It's slate tiles over wooden beams and it leaks. Not everywhere, just in strategic locations designed to cause maximum inconvenience. Maybe over the bed, maybe over the table. You put out pots and buckets to catch the drips, and the sound of water plinking into metal becomes the soundtrack of your life. In winter, those leaks turn to ice, creating miniature stalactites that hang from your ceiling like the world's most depressing chandelier. There's no running water in the house. None. You haul water from a communal pump at the end of the street, carrying it in buckets that weigh about as much as a small child when full. Every drop of water you use for cooking, cleaning, or the occasional attempt at washing you've carried by hand. In winter, the pump sometimes freezes, and you have to chip away ice just to get access. It's like living in a very boring survival game where the prize for winning is not dying. The toilet situation deserves its own horror movie. Most houses share a privy, an outdoor latrine at the end of a narrow yard. It's a wooden box with a hole over a brick pit. In summer, it's a fly-infested nightmare. In winter, it's a frozen circle of hell where you risk frostbite in places you really don't want frostbite. You do your business as quickly as humanly possible, and you don't linger. The privy is shared among several families, which means it's always occupied when you need it, and always disgusting when it's available. Inside the house, there's often a chamber pot for nighttime use, especially for the children and elderly who can't make the freezing dash to the outdoor privy. In the morning, someone, usually the woman of the house, has to empty it. It's not glamorous. Nothing about this life is glamorous. The house smells. There's no polite way to say it. It smells like coal smoke, always. Because coal smoke gets into everything. It smells like damp wool and unwashed bodies and boiled cabbage. It smells like mildew and chamber pots and the general funk of too many people in too small a space with no ventilation. You stop noticing after a while. Nose blindness is your friend. This is your castle. Your sanctuary, the place you return to after 12 hours underground, hoping for warmth and finding only slightly less cold. It's not much. By any standard, modern or historical, it's borderline uninhabitable. But it's yours. You pay rent for it. A chunk of your wages going to a landlord you've never met who owns 50 identical houses just like this one. And here's the thing that makes it all worse. You can see the big houses on the hill, the mine owner's mansion with its chimneys puffing smoke from fires in every room, its wide windows glowing with gaslight. Your coal heats his home, your labour built his wealth, and you go home to frozen walls and a leaking roof. But you make it work. You stuff rags in the window cracks. You huddle close to the fire. You pile the children together for warmth. You survive because that's what you do. That's what you've always done. Welcome home. You don't wake up gently in 1880s Northern England. You wake up because the cold has physically assaulted you into consciousness. It's 4 a.m., still dark, and the temperature inside your house is barely above freezing. There's frost on the inside of your window. Yes, inside. Your breath comes out in visible clouds, and your blanket, a thin wool thing that smells like mildew and coal smoke, has done absolutely nothing to protect you. Your body is stiff, not the kind of stiff you get from sleeping weird on your neck. This is full body rigor mortis, the kind that makes you wonder if you've actually died in the night, and this is some cruel purgatory. Your joints ache. Your muscles have seized up from the cold and from yesterday's 12-hour shift hacking away at coal seams. You're 28 years old, but you feel about 70. Welcome to mining. The first sound you hear, even before you're fully conscious, is coughing. Not just your coughing, everyone's coughing. Your neighbour through the paper-thin walls, your children in the bed next to you, your own lungs trying to expel the coal dust that's taken up permanent residence. It's a chorus of hacking that starts around 4 a.m. and doesn't really stop until everyone's dead. The whole street sounds like a tuberculosis ward, which, to be fair, it kind of is. You lie there for a moment, gathering the will to move. This is the hardest part of the day. Not the descent into the mine, not the back-breaking labour. This, right here, the moment when you have to convince yourself to leave the relative warmth of the pile of bodies and blankets and face the frozen air of your bedroom. It's a psychological battle you fight every single morning, and every single morning you lose. Because you have to get up. There's no calling in sick. There's no working from home. There's just the mine, and if you don't show up, you don't get paid. And if you don't get paid, your family starves. So you move. Peeling yourself out of bed is like removing a bandage from a wound, except the wound is your entire existence and the bandage is the only thing keeping you from hypothermia. The second you move the blanket, cold air rushes in like it's been waiting for this moment. Your children, packed in beside you for warmth, immediately curl into the spot you've left, seeking any residual body heat. They don't wake up. They're young enough to sleep through anything, even the sound of their father wheezing like a broken accordion. Your feet hit the floor and it's like stepping onto a frozen lake. The floorboards are ice cold and you can actually feel the warmth being sucked out of your body through your soles. You don't have slippers because slippers are for people with disposable income, which you are not. You stand there for a second, shivering violently, your teeth already chattering, and you wonder, not for the first time, what it would be like to just not go, to crawl back into bed, to say the hell with it all. But you don't. You never do. Because that's not how this works. There's no alarm clock. You don't need one. Your body knows. After years of waking at 4 a.m, your internal clock is more reliable than any timepiece. Plus, the knocker-upper already came by at 3:45, tapping on your window with his long pole, ensuring the entire street wakes up in synchronized misery. Yes, that was a real job. Someone whose entire employment was walking around with a stick waking up miners. It's like an alarm clock. But more annoying, and with the added benefit of giving someone else a terrible job too. You fumble in the dark for your clothes. There's no light because candles cost money, and you're not wasting a candle on getting dressed. You know where everything is by feel. The same clothes you wore yesterday. The same clothes you've worn every day for months. They're draped over the end of the bed, still damp with yesterday's sweat and condensation, stiff with dried coal dust and general grime. Your wife stirs beside you. She doesn't have to get up yet, not for another hour, but she does anyway. She always does. In a few minutes she'll go downstairs and try to coax the dead fire back to life, boil water for tea, cut bread for your breakfast. But right now she just watches you dress in the dark, both of you silent because there's nothing to say. This is just what life is. Every day, the same cold, the same dark, the same dread. The air in the bedroom is so cold it hurts to breathe. Each inhale feels like swallowing shards of ice. Your lungs, already compromised from years of coal dust, protest loudly. You cough, a deep, rattling sound that brings up something black. You spit it into the rag you keep by the bed. You don't look at it. You never look at it. Looking at it means acknowledging what it is, what it means, and you can't afford that kind of honesty at 4 a.m. Outside, you can hear the street coming to life, doors opening and closing, boots on cobblestones, the occasional shouted greeting, though most men walk to the pit in silence. What's there to talk about? You're all going to the same place, doing the same thing, living the same nightmare. Conversation seems redundant. Your hands are already stiff from the cold, fingers barely functional. Arthritis has set in early, a gift from years of swinging a pickaxe in damp, freezing conditions. Your knuckles are swollen, your joints ache, and gripping anything is an exercise in pain management. This is going to make holding tools interesting for the next 12 hours. There's a moment every single morning where you stand there in the dark and cold and you think about your father. He was a miner. He died at 43, coughing up blood in this very room, his lungs finally giving up after decades of abuse. And his father before him, same story. And here you are, following the family tradition, slowly suffocating yourself for wages that barely cover rent. It's generational trauma with a side of pneumoconiosis. But here's the thing nobody tells you about being a coal miner in Victorian England. It's not the physical hardship that breaks you, though that's certainly trying. It's the relentlessness of it. The fact that you do this every single day, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year, for your entire adult life. There's no vacation, no sick days, no retirement plan beyond hope you die before you're too weak to work. The monotony of suffering is its own special kind of hell. You can hear your youngest child coughing now, a wet, concerning sound. He's 5, already showing signs of the chest weakness that plagues mining families. He's never been underground, not yet, but the coal dust that clings to your clothes, that you bring home on your skin and in your hair, it doesn't discriminate. The whole family breathes it in. The whole family pays the price. Your wife has made it downstairs. You can hear her moving around in the kitchen, the clank of the kettle, the scrape of the coal shovel. She's trying to be quiet, which is pointless in a house this small. Every sound echoes, every movement is public. But she tries anyway, because that's what you do. You maintain the small courtesies even when everything else has gone to hell. You take a deep breath, immediately regret it as your lungs seize up. Cough again, and head for the stairs. The steps creak under your weight, announcing your descent like a herald of doom. At the bottom, the kitchen is barely warmer than the bedroom. Your wife has managed to get a small fire going, but it's struggling, the flames weak and reluctant. The room is thick with smoke because the chimney doesn't draw properly. Nothing in this house works properly. On the table is your breakfast. We'll get to that disaster in a moment, but first you have to finish waking up, which means splashing your face with water from the bucket. The water has a thin layer of ice on top. You break through it with your hand, which is now numb, and splash the freezing water on your face. It's like being slapped by winter itself. Your skin goes instantly red. Your eyes water. You gasp. Congratulations. You're awake. Time to go to work. Now that you're awake and shivering, it's time to get dressed. And by dressed, I mean wrapping yourself in layers of clothing that haven't been truly dry since last summer. You pull on your flannel shirt, still clammy from yesterday's sweat and condensation. Over that goes a wool vest that itches like it's made from angry bees. Then your work trousers, patched in 7 places and stiff with dried mud and coal dust. The trousers stand up on their own, literally. You could prop them in the corner like a scarecrow, and they'd hold their shape. They're so encrusted with coal dust and bodily fluids that they've achieved a kind of structural integrity that cloth was never meant to have. The fabric is stiff, scratchy, and has roughly the same texture as tree bark. You step into them, and it's like putting on armour made of discomfort. These trousers have been with you for 3 years. 3 years of daily wear, daily abuse, and almost no washing. You can't wash them properly because you don't have enough water. Soap is expensive, and besides, they'd never dry in your freezing damp house. So you just wear them, day after day, until they're more coal dust than fabric, more patch than original material. Your wife has sewn them back together so many times that there's a folk tale in your street about a pair of trousers that's achieved sentience. The patches are mismatched because beggars can't be choosers. There's a bit of old curtain on one knee, a piece of flour sack on the thigh, something that might have been a pillowcase covering a rip near the crotch. It's a patchwork quilt of poverty, stitched together with thread that doesn't match and hope that's running thin. Fashion is not a concern. Keeping your legs covered is. Next comes the shirt situation. You're already wearing one flannel shirt, but that's not enough. Nobody in Victorian mining country wears just one layer. That's suicide. You pull on a second shirt, this one even more disreputable than the first. It's got holes in the elbows and a stain on the front that you're pretty sure is blood from that time you smashed your hand with a pickaxe last month. Or maybe it's rust or gravy. Who can tell anymore? Everything is the same shade of brownish grey. The wool vest goes on next. If you thought the shirts were itchy, the vest is on another level. It's like wearing a sweater made from steel wool and regret. The wool is coarse, unwashed, and filled with all manner of delightful things. Coal dust, dead skin cells, and probably a few lice having the time of their lives. The itching starts immediately. Your back, your chest, your shoulders. It's a full-body assault of prickling discomfort that will last all day, but you can't not wear it. The vest is insulation, and underground in winter you need every layer you can get. The mine is freezing. People think of mines as hot deep in the earth, but they're wrong. In northern England, the cold penetrates everything. The stone walls of the mine are like ice. Water seeps constantly, collecting in puddles that freeze overnight. You need that vest no matter how much it makes you want to claw your own skin off. Over the vest goes a jacket. It's wool again, because everything is wool. Cotton is for rich people. Your jacket is more whole than fabric at this point. Threadbare at the elbows and cuffs, missing buttons that were replaced with bits of string tied through the buttonholes. The collar is so worn it's started to disintegrate. But it's a jacket, and it's yours, and you'll wear it until it literally falls apart, at which point your wife will somehow stitch it back together again. Now for the socks. Oh, the socks! You have 2 pairs. One on your feet right now, which you've been wearing for 4 days straight, and one drying by the fire, which you wore for the 4 days before that. You rotate them like this, an endless cycle of damp, smelly footwear. The socks are wool, hand-knitted by your wife from yarn that's been darned and redarned so many times that they're more repair than original sock. They're full of holes. Your big toe pokes through one side, your heel is exposed on the other. But you wear them anyway because even hole-filled socks are better than no socks. You pull them up, and immediately your feet feel simultaneously warmer and more uncomfortable. The damp wool squishes between your toes. The holes pinch. Welcome to another day of having feet. Boots come next. These are your most valuable possession aside from your pickaxe. They're heavy leather work boots with steel toe caps, and they cost you nearly a week's wages when you bought them 5 years ago. They're held together with wire, prayer, and sheer stubbornness. The soles have been replaced twice. The leather is cracked and splitting. The laces are a combination of string, wire, and what might be dried intestine. You honestly can't remember anymore. Getting the boots on is an ordeal. They're stiff from dried mud and coal water. Your feet are swollen from yesterday's shift. Your fingers are still numb from the cold. You struggle, swear under your breath, and finally get them on. You lace them up tight because loose boots in a mine are a good way to trip, fall, and die. Everything in the mine wants to kill you. You don't need to help it along by having floppy footwear. The boots are too small. They were always too small. You couldn't afford the right size, so you bought what you could and convinced yourself they'd stretch. They didn't. Your toes are permanently cramped, curled up like little frozen shrimp. You have blisters on top of blisters, calluses that have developed their own calluses, and toenails that are perpetually black from repeated trauma. Your feet haven't been comfortable in years. You've forgotten what that feels like. Around your neck goes a scarf. It's wool, obviously, and it's got more holes than a cheese grater. Your wife knitted it for you when you first got married, back when you were both young and stupid enough to think life might get better. It didn't. But you still wear the scarf. It smells like coal smoke and nostalgia. And it's one of the few items of clothing you own that wasn't purchased out of pure desperation. You wrap it around your neck several times, tucking the ends into your jacket. This serves 2 purposes. 1, it keeps your neck warm, or at least less cold. 2, it keeps coal dust from going straight down your shirt when you're crawling through low tunnels. The dust gets everywhere anyway, but the scarf helps. A little. Maybe. You tell yourself it helps. Now comes the cap. Every miner wears a flat cap, and yours is spectacular in its grimness. It's so soaked with coal dust and sweat that it's gone completely black. The original colour might have been brown or grey or plaid. Nobody knows anymore. It's just black now. The bill is bent from being stuffed in pockets and sat on. The fabric is so thin you can see through it in places. But the cap serves a purpose. It keeps your head warm, keeps coal dust out of your hair, and gives you somewhere to clip your lamp once you're underground. Without the cap, you'd be working in total darkness, which is even less fun than it sounds. So you jam it on your head, adjust it to a jaunty angle as if that makes any difference, and you're ready. Well, almost ready. You grab your snap tin, a small metal container where your wife has packed your lunch. It's cold in your hands, the metal like ice. Inside is the same thing it is every day. Bread, maybe some cheese, possibly a bit of cold bacon if you're lucky. You tuck it into your jacket pocket. It'll get crushed during the day, but that's fine. Crushed food tastes the same as uncrushed food when you're eating it in pitch darkness surrounded by rats. One last thing. You pull on your muffler, another scarf that you wrap around your face and neck, leaving only your eyes exposed. This is less about warmth and more about keeping the coal dust out of your mouth and nose during the walk to the pit. It doesn't really work. The dust gets through anyway, but it's something. It's an effort, and effort is all you have. You stand there for a moment, fully dressed, looking like a Victorian version of the Michelin Man if the Michelin Man had given up on life. You're wearing every piece of clothing you own, and you're still cold. Your body is encased in damp, itchy, ill-fitting layers that smell like a combination of sweat, coal, mildew and defeat. You glance down at yourself, patched trousers, holey socks, boots held together with hope, a jacket that's seen better decades. You look. And there's no other way to say this. Absolutely terrible. But everyone looks terrible. This is the uniform of survival. This is what staying alive looks like in 1880s Northern England. Your wife hands you your piece. That's what they call breakfast here. Your piece. A chunk of bread and maybe some dripping if the budget allowed it this week. You take it, nod at her, and head for the door. Time to walk to the pit. Time to descend into hell. Time to do it all over again. At least you're dressed for it. Congratulations, you've made it to breakfast. Don't get excited. There's no avocado toast here. No smoothies. No artisan coffee with oat milk. You sit down at a rough wooden table with splinters that attack without warning, and before you is a bowl of porridge so grey and lifeless it looks like it's already given up. The porridge is made from oats, water and disappointment. That's it. No milk, because milk costs money. No sugar, because sugar is a luxury reserved for Christmas and deathbeds. No honey, no fruit, no cinnamon, no anything that might make it remotely pleasant to consume. Just oats and water, boiled into a thick, gluey consistency that has the texture of wallpaper paste and roughly the same flavour profile. Your wife made it an hour ago, letting it sit on the barely warm stove while she tried to coax some life into the fire. Now it's formed a skin on top, a rubbery membrane that you have to break through with your spoon. The spoon, by the way, is wooden, carved by hand, and has been in the family longer than you've been alive. It's got grooves worn into it from decades of use, and you're pretty sure those grooves are breeding grounds for bacteria that could fell a horse. But you don't have another spoon, so this one will do. You break through the skin and dig into the porridge. It's lukewarm, which is somehow worse than hot or cold. It's just tepid, like eating something that died but hasn't had the decency to cool down yet. You lift the spoon to your mouth, and the porridge slides off in one gelatinous blob. You try again. This time it stays on the spoon long enough to make it into your mouth. The taste is exactly what you'd expect. Nothing. It tastes like wet cardboard mixed with regret. You chew, even though there's nothing to chew. It's just a thick paste that coats your mouth and sits heavy in your stomach like a stone. But it's calories, and calories are fuel, and you need fuel to swing a pickaxe for 12 hours. So you eat, you don't enjoy it. You just mechanically spoon grey sludge into your face until the bowl is empty. Next to your porridge is bread. A chunk of it, about the size of your fist, dark and dense and harder than most rocks you'll encounter in the mine today. This is not the fluffy white bread of your modern fantasies. This is working-class Victorian bread, made from the cheapest flour available, which means it's been cut with all sorts of exciting additives. Sawdust, chalk, alum, bone dust, whatever the baker could find to bulk it up without technically killing anyone. The bread is stale because fresh bread is for people who shop daily, and you shop when you can afford it, which is not daily. This loaf is 4 days old and it shows. The crust could be used as a weapon. The interior is dense and chewy, like trying to eat a very aggressive sponge. You tear off a piece, and it requires actual effort. Your jaw muscles are getting a workout before you've even left the house. You dip the bread into your tea to soften it because biting into it directly risks breaking a tooth, and dentists are not in your budget. Actually, dentists are not in anyone's budget in your neighbourhood. The going solution for tooth problems is either suffer in silence or have someone yank it out with pliers. No anaesthesia, just bite down on this leather strap and try not to scream. The tea. Let's talk about the tea. It's strong enough to strip paint, black as coal, and served in a chipped tin mug that's been in the family since your grandfather's time. The tea is made from leaves that have already been used twice. Yes, twice. Your wife brews a pot, uses the leaves, then dries them out and uses them again the next day. By the time it gets to you, the tea is more the memory of tea than actual tea, but it's hot and it's wet and it washes down the cement like bread, so you drink it. There's no sugar in the tea because, again, sugar costs money. There's no milk because you're not made of money. It's just hot, bitter, oversteeped tea that tastes like someone boiled a boot. You gulp it down anyway because it's warm, and warmth is in short supply. The heat spreads through your chest, briefly thawing your insides, and for just a moment, you feel almost human. If it's a good week, if your wages were decent and nothing broke that needed fixing, there might be a bit of bacon. A tiny piece, maybe 2 inches long, fatty and tough, fried in its own grease until it's crispy enough to shatter. You tear it into smaller pieces to make it last longer, savouring each salty, greasy bite. Bacon is luxury. Bacon is celebration. Bacon means this week, at least. You're not at the very bottom of the poverty barrel, but most weeks there's no bacon. Most weeks, it's just porridge and bread and bitter tea. Sometimes there's dripping, the congealed fat left over from a Sunday roast, spread on bread like the world's most depressing butter. It's grey-white, solid at room temperature, and tastes overwhelmingly of animal fat and salt. But it's protein, sort of, and it makes the bread marginally less terrible, so you eat it without complaint. Your children are starting to wake up upstairs. You can hear them stirring, coughing, the floorboards creaking. They'll come down soon, and they'll eat what's left, which is never enough. There's never enough. Your wife portions out the food with mathematical precision, trying to make a meal that should feed 3 people, somehow stretched to feed 7. The children get the most because they're growing. You get enough to function. Your wife gets whatever's left, which is usually not much. She's standing by the stove now, not eating, just watching you eat, making sure you get enough to survive the day. Her face is thin, drawn, older than her years. She's 32 but looks 50. That's what malnutrition and stress and bearing 6 children in a freezing house will do to you. She hasn't had a decent meal in years because she always gives her portion to the children. That's just what mothers do here. They sacrifice silently, endlessly, until there's nothing left to give. You want to tell her to sit down, to eat something, but you know she won't. This is the routine. This is how it works. You eat so you can work. She doesn't eat so the children can. It's a grim calculus of survival that plays out in every mining house on every frozen morning. The kitchen is thick with smoke from the struggling fire. Your eyes water. You cough, bringing up more black phlegm. You spit it into the fire where it sizzles and disappears. Nobody comments on this. Coughing up black stuff is as normal as breathing. Actually, it's part of breathing. Your lungs are slowly turning into coal, one shift at a time. You finish your tea, scraping the last of the porridge from the bowl with your finger. Because wasting food is unthinkable. You stand up, your knees cracking like gunshots, your back already protesting the day ahead. Your wife hands you your snap tin, your lunch, which contains more of the same, bread, maybe some cheese if you're lucky, wrapped in a cloth that's been washed so many times it's almost transparent. The tin is cold in your hands. You tuck it into your jacket pocket, where it will slowly warm to body temperature and the bread inside will slowly petrify into something even harder than it already is. By lunchtime, it will be inedible, but you'll eat it anyway because it's all you have. Your youngest comes downstairs, rubbing sleep from his eyes, coughing that same wet cough. He's 5 years old and already sounds like an old man. He looks at the empty porridge pot hopefully, and your wife immediately starts scraping out what's stuck to the sides, mixing it with water to make a thinner, even more pathetic version of breakfast. He'll eat it without complaint because he's never known anything else. This is breakfast. This is every breakfast. The same grey porridge, The same rock-hard bread, the same bitter tea. There's no variety, no treats, no looking forward to pancakes on Sunday or eggs on special occasions. It's just survival food designed to keep you alive long enough to dig more coal, so you can earn enough to buy more survival food, so you can dig more coal. It's a cycle without end or joy. You take one last look around the kitchen, the dying fire, your exhausted wife, your coughing child, the bare walls, the damp floor. This is what you're working for, this cold, hungry, desperate existence. 12 hours underground, risking death daily, destroying your body systematically, all for wages that can barely provide grey porridge and stale bread. You head for the door. Your stomach is full but unsatisfied the way it always is. You've consumed calories, not food. Fuel, not a meal. There's a difference, and you know it, even if you can't articulate it. You know that somewhere people eat for pleasure, people enjoy breakfast, people sit down to eggs and ham and fresh bread with butter. But that's not your world. Your world is grey porridge at 4:30 a.m, eaten in silence while your joints ache and your lungs burn. Time to go to work. It's still dark when you leave the house. The street is narrow, cobbled, and slick with ice, and something you're choosing not to identify. Other miners shuffle alongside you, a parade of hunched shoulders and hacking coughs. Nobody speaks much. What's there to say? Lovely morning for descending into the earth's bowels. The street is barely wide enough for 2 carts to pass. The cobblestones are uneven, worn smooth in some places and missing entirely in others, leaving gaps filled with frozen mud and what you desperately hope is just dirty water. But you know it's not just water. The street doubles as an open sewer. Chamber pots were emptied here yesterday. Probably this morning too. The whole thing is a frozen river of human waste, horse manure, and industrial runoff that's turned into a treacherous ice rink of biological hazards. You walk carefully, each step calculated, because slipping here means more than just embarrassment. It means landing face first in God knows what, soaking your only set of work clothes, and possibly breaking something. And you can't afford broken bones. There's no sick pay, no workers' compensation. You break your arm, you starve. It's that simple. So you shuffle along like everyone else, taking small, cautious steps, your boots crunching on the frozen filth. The air is so cold it feels solid. Each breath burns your throat and lungs. Your nose hairs freeze almost immediately. Your eyes water from the wind, and the tears freeze on your cheeks, creating tiny ice tracks down your face. You've wrapped your muffler around your mouth and nose, but it doesn't help much. The cold just finds new ways in. Through your collar, through the gaps in your jacket, through the holes in your gloves that you can't afford to replace. Other men emerge from their houses, joining the silent procession. You recognise most of them. That's Joe Thompson, walking with a limp from the roof fall that crushed his foot 3 years ago. There's old William, who's not old at all, just 50, but looks 70 because that's what mining does to you. The Martin brothers, twins who work the same seam you do, both coughing in perfect synchronization like some kind of depressing chorus. Everyone looks the same in the pre-dawn darkness. Hunched figures wrapped in dark clothes, faces hidden by scarves and caps, breath coming out in the white clouds. You're like a column of ghosts, already dead but still going through the motions. Nobody makes eye contact. Nobody greets each other with false cheer. There's an understanding here, a shared misery that doesn't need words. The street is lined with identical terraced houses, all dark except for the occasional flicker of candlelight in a window. These are the houses of other miners, other families waking up to the same nightmare. The entire neighbourhood is built around the pit. That's all there is here, the mine and the people who serve it. No shops selling anything you could afford, no parks, no trees, just rows and rows of brick houses, all exactly the same, all equally depressing. You pass the corner shop, closed at this hour, its windows dark. This is where you buy your food when you can afford it, which is less often than you'd like. The shopkeeper is also the company man who runs the truck system, meaning you buy on credit, and that credit is deducted from your wages. You're perpetually in debt to the shop, which is perpetually in debt to the mining company. It's a beautiful system if you're the mining company, less beautiful if you're you. The wind picks up, howling down the narrow street like it's got a personal vendetta against working people. It's that UD Northern England wind, the kind that doesn't just blow, it attacks. It finds every gap in your clothing and exploits it mercilessly. You hunch down further, trying to make yourself smaller, trying to present less surface area to the cold. A few women are out walking in the opposite direction. They're heading to the textile mills or the match factories, their shift starting just as early as yours. They look just as miserable, just as exhausted. Some of them are young girls, teenagers, bundled up against the cold, their faces pale and drawn. Child labour isn't an abstract concept here. It's Tuesday. You can see your breath, everyone's breath, creating a fog that hangs in the street. The collective exhalation of 100 tired men, visible proof of life in a landscape that seems designed to extinguish it. Some men are smoking, cigarettes or pipes, adding tobacco smoke to the morning mist. It's probably the warmest thing about the walk, that little ember glowing in the darkness. The pit is about half a mile from your house. Half a mile doesn't sound like much. In summer, in daylight on a proper path, it would be nothing. But in winter, in darkness, on frozen excrement, it feels like an expedition to the Arctic. Your feet are already numb. Your fingers are cramping inside your gloves. Your face feels like it's been sandblasted with ice, and you haven't even gotten to work yet. You pass the pub, also closed, its windows dark, the King's Arms. You'll stop there on Saturday night, if you have any wages left after paying the shop credit, the rent, and keeping your family from starving. You'll have a pint or two, not to celebrate but to forget. To numb the pain in your back and the fear in your chest and the knowledge that you're going to do this all over again next week. More men join the procession from side streets. The crowd thickens. You're all heading to the same place, drawn like iron filings to a magnet, except the magnet is a hole in the ground that wants to kill you. The sound of boots on cobblestones echoes off the brick walls, a rhythmic shuffle thump that's oddly hypnotic. It's the sound of resignation, the sound of men who've given up fighting and just accepted their fate. Someone up ahead coughs violently, a wet rattling sound that goes on too long. Nobody turns to look. Nobody asks if he's all right. You all know he's not all right. None of you are all right. You're all dying, slowly, from the inside out. It's just a question of who goes first. The sky's starting to lighten, just barely, a faint grey smudge on the eastern horizon. Not sunrise, not yet, but the promise of it. Not that it matters. You'll be underground by the time the sun comes up. You won't see daylight again until your shift ends, and in winter, by then the sun will have already set. You go down in darkness. You come up in darkness. The sun is a theoretical concept, something other people enjoy. You can see the pit head now in the distance, a dark silhouette against the slightly less dark sky. The winding gear towers over everything, a skeletal structure of iron and wood that looks like something out of a nightmare. Smoke pours from the engine house, steam hisses from pipes. Even from here, you can hear the mechanical sounds, the clank and grind of the machinery that will lower you into the earth. The crowd is thicker now, dozens of men all converging on the pit. Some are boys, really, 14 or 15, too young to be doing this, but too poor to do anything else. Some are old-timers in their 40s and 50s, grey and bent, who should have retired years ago but can't because retirement means death by starvation. Everyone shuffles forward, silent, grim, accepting. Your back already hurts, and you haven't done anything yet. Your knees ache, your hands are stiff. You're about to spend 12 hours in a cramped tunnel, swinging a pickaxe, breathing coal dust, and praying the roof doesn't collapse. And this is just a normal Tuesday. This is every day. This is your life. The pit looms larger as you approach, the winding gear creaking and groaning, the engine chugging, smoke billowing into the frozen air. It looks like the entrance to hell, which is appropriate because that's essentially what it is. A hole in the ground where men go to suffer and die so that other people far away in warm houses, can have coal for their fires. You join the queue at the pit head, waiting your turn to descend. The men around you stamp their feet trying to keep warm, trying to maintain circulation in their frozen limbs. Nobody's talking. There's just the sound of coughing, boots on stone and the mechanical heartbeat of the mine. You've made it to work. The walk is over. Now comes the hard part. Now comes everything else. You look up at the sky one last time. That grey pre-dawn twilight. and take a deep breath of cold air. It'll be the last fresh air you breathe for 12 hours. Time to go underground. You've arrived at the colliery, and even from outside you can feel it. The pit head looms like a Victorian nightmare, all iron and smoke and industrial menace. The winding gear, a massive wheel that lowers and raises the cage, creaks and groans like something alive and suffering. Steam hisses from pipes. Men bark orders. Somewhere metal crashes against metal. The structure itself is a monument to industrial brutality. Wooden beams as thick as tree trunks support an iron framework that towers over the surrounding buildings. The head frame, they call it, though gateway to suffering would be more accurate. At the top is the sheave wheel, massive and medieval looking, with a steel cable as thick as your arm wrapped around it. That cable is the only thing between you and a 1,000-foot drop. Sleep well tonight. The engine house sits nearby. A brick building that shakes and rattles as the steam engine inside works to power the winding gear. Coal-fired, obviously. The mine burns coal to extract coal. It's the circle of industrial life. Black smoke pours from its chimney, adding to the already oppressive atmosphere. The whole area is covered in a fine layer of coal dust that's turned everything. The buildings, the ground, even the snow. A uniform grey-black. You queue up with the other miners at the lamp room, a small wooden shed where an old man with spectacular sideburns and a permanent scowl hands out the safety lamps. These are Davy lamps, named after Sir Humphrey Davy, who invented them to prevent explosions from methane gas. In theory, the lamp's flame stays contained inside a wire mesh, preventing it from igniting the explosive gases that accumulate underground. In theory. In practice, men still die in explosions regularly, but at least they die holding a lamp named after a knight. The lampman checks your tally, a small metal disc with your worker number stamped on it. This isn't for your safety. It's so they know who's underground if something goes wrong. If the mine collapses or floods or explodes, they'll check the tallies and know exactly how many bodies to look for. Comforting, isn't it? He hands you your lamp, already lit, the flame barely visible in the dim morning light but flickering reassuringly behind its wire mesh cage. You clip the lamp to your belt and shuffle toward the cage, the metal platform that will take you down. The area around the shaft opening is organised chaos. The banksman, the man in charge of the surface operations, shouts instructions and controls the flow of workers. Coal tubs are being hauled up from below, empty ones going down. The whole operation runs on a strict schedule because time is money, and the mine owners care about money more than they care about your continued existence. The ground around the shaft is muddy, churned up by countless boots and wheels. Wooden planks have been laid down to create walkways, but they're slick with ice and coal slurry. Men slip regularly. Last month, someone slipped right into the shaft opening before the cage arrived. They found pieces of him at the bottom. The company sent his widow a bill for the disruption to the schedule. That's not a joke. They actually did that. You can feel the draft from the shaft now, a cold wind blowing up from the depths. The mine breathes. Air goes down one shaft and up another, pushed by massive fans to keep the miners from suffocating. But that air is cold, Arctic cold, and it brings with it the smell of the mine, coal dust, damp stone, timber and something else. Something organic and rotten that you try not to think about. Other miners gather around, waiting for the cage. Some are veterans, men who've been doing this for decades, their faces permanently black with ingrained coal dust. No amount of scrubbing will ever get it out. It's in their pores, under their skin, part of their flesh now. They stand quietly, faces blank, minds already preparing for what's coming. Then there are the younger men, the new ones. Still nervous, still scared. You can spot them easily. They're the ones whose hands shake when they light their pipes. The deputy, a sort of underground foreman, does a head count. He's responsible for his team, which means he's responsible for keeping you alive long enough to mine coal. He's also paid more than you, which breeds a special kind of resentment. But he's been down there longer, knows the mine better, and occasionally that knowledge saves lives. So you tolerate him, even though he's clearly the company's man. The cage arrives with a screech of metal and a blast of cold air from below. It's a simple platform, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, surrounded by a waist-high metal railing that's supposed to prevent you from falling out. It doesn't always work. The floor is wooden planks, worn smooth and slick from thousands of boots. There's no roof, no sides, nothing to protect you from the shaft walls rushing past as you descend. 20 men pack into the cage. There's no concept of personal space here. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder, back to chest, breathing each other's breath. The lamp man does a final count, checks that everyone's lamp is working. A dead lamp means you don't go down, and you don't get paid, and then signals to the winding man in the engine house. The gate clangs shut with a sound like a prison door. Because that's what it is really, a prison door. For the next 12 hours you're trapped down there. The only way out is up, and up is controlled by the company. The cage sways slightly, metal creaking. Someone behind you mutters a prayer under his breath. Several men cross themselves. Nobody laughs at them. When you're about to drop 1,000 feet into the dark, religion stops being a personal choice and starts being a very reasonable precaution. Above you, the winding gear starts to turn. The cable groans. The cage lurches, and your stomach does that thing where it tries to escape through your throat, and then you're dropping. Not falling exactly, but descending fast enough that your feet momentarily leave the floor. The walls of the shaft rush past, dark and wet, illuminated by the collective glow of 20 feeble lamps. The descent takes about 3 minutes. 3 minutes of dropping through darkness, the cage swaying and bouncing, the cable creaking overhead like it's reconsidering its life choices. 3 minutes where you're very aware that you're dangling from a steel rope, held by machinery operated by men who are probably tired, possibly drunk, and definitely paid too little to care about your safety. The walls of the shaft are brick-lined at the top, rough-hewn rock further down. Water seeps from between the stones, dripping constantly, creating small streams that run down the walls and fall into the darkness below. Some of it splashes onto the cage, onto you. It's freezing cold and tastes of minerals and despair. You can hear the sounds of the mine now, echoing up through the shaft. The clang of metal on stone, the rumble of coal tubs on rails, voices shouting in the distance, distorted and strange. The mine has its own acoustic properties, amplifying some sounds, swallowing others. It's disorienting, like listening to a conversation through walls. The temperature drops as you descend. It gets colder, not warmer. This isn't some cosy underground cavern warmed by the Earth's heat. This is northern England, where even the geology is miserable. The cold down here is damp and penetrating, the kind that gets into your bones and sets up camp. Someone coughs, then someone else. Soon half the cage is coughing, a chorus of lung disease in 4-part harmony. The sound echoes off the shaft walls, amplified and horrible. You add your own cough to the symphony, bringing up the usual black phlegm. You spit it into the darkness below, where it disappears. Everything disappears down here eventually. The cage slows, jerks, and stops at the landing, about 900 feet below the surface. The gate opens and men file out onto the landing platform, a small wooden structure at the bottom of the shaft. Your legs are shaky. Your ears are popping from the pressure change. Your eyes are trying to adjust to a darkness that's almost total, barely held back by the feeble glow of the lamps. This is the pit bottom, the main artery of the mine. Rails run in multiple directions, disappearing into tunnels that branch off like veins. Coal tubs sit waiting, some full, some empty. Pit ponies stand in the shadows, patient and resigned. The air is thick with dust and the smell of horses and human sweat. The deputy checks everyone off his list again, making sure nobody fell out during the descent. It's happened before, it'll happen again. He assigns you to your section, tells you which seam you're working today, reminds you that if you die, please try to do it in a way that doesn't disrupt production. You're here, you're underground. The surface is 900 feet above you. Might as well be on the moon for all the good it does you now. You've descended into the mine and now comes the real work. Now comes the crawling, the hacking, the breathing of dust. The 12 hours of breaking your body for wages that won't keep your children fed. Welcome to the pit. And now comes the part that never gets easier. The descent. You and about 20 other miners shuffle into the cage, a rickety metal platform surrounded by wire mesh. It's cramped. It smells like sweat, fear, and coal dust. The gate clangs shut with a sound that echoes like a prison door, and then someone rings the bell. The bell system is simple. 1 ring means stop. 2 rings means lower. 3 rings means raise. 4 rings means there's been an accident. You hear 4 rings more often than you'd like. Today it's 2 rings, clear and sharp, echoing across the pit yard. The signal travels to the engine house where the winding man, who you've never met and who holds your life in his hands, receives it and engages the machinery. Nothing happens for a moment, just the cage swaying slightly in the shaft, creaking on its cable. 20 men packed together, not making eye contact, trying very hard not to think about the fact that they're about to drop nearly 1,000 feet on a metal platform held up by a single rope. Then the brake releases with a metallic clunk that you feel through your boots, and the world drops away. Your stomach lurches into your throat. The floor seems to disappear beneath your feet for a split second before gravity catches up and slams you back down. The cage drops fast. Faster than feels safe. Faster than feels survivable. The shaft walls blur past, dark and wet and close enough to touch if you were stupid enough to reach out. You're not. Men have lost hands that way. Arms torn off by protruding timbers or brick edges as the cage hurtles downward. The descent is loud. The cable screeches against the pulley wheels above. The cage rattles and shakes. Metal groans. Something somewhere is making a high-pitched whining sound that sets your teeth on edge. And underneath it all, the rushing sound of air being displaced, a whooshing that gets louder the faster you drop. It's like falling with extra steps and significantly more terror. The man next to you has his eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. He's Catholic, crosses himself 3 times before every descent. You're not religious, or at least you weren't before you started mining, but you understand the impulse. When you're dropping through darkness held up by Victorian engineering, faith seems less like superstition and more like a reasonable insurance policy. The lamp clipped to your belt swings wildly, casting crazy shadows that dance across the faces of the other miners. Everyone looks ghoulish in the flickering light, hollow-eyed and grim. Some men stare straight ahead, faces blank, minds clearly somewhere else, anywhere else. Others watch the shaft walls rushing past with morbid fascination, as if memorizing the exact spot where they'll die when the cable snaps. The cable won't snap, probably. It's inspected regularly, or so they say. Of course, regularly is a flexible term, and inspected might just mean someone looked at it and said, seems fine. The cable is made of steel wire twisted together into a rope as thick as your thigh, and it's strong, usually, until it's not, until metal fatigue sets in, until one wire too many breaks, until the whole thing unravels and 20 men plummet to their deaths at the bottom of a shaft. This has happened. Not at this mine, but at others. The newspapers covered it. Illustrated journals showed graphic engravings of the mangled cage, the broken bodies. The companies paid compensation to the widows. £5 per dead miner. That's what a man's life is worth. £5 and a paragraph in the local paper, expressing deep regret and promising that lessons will be learned. They never are. The cage drops past the brick-lined section of the shaft and into the rough-cut rock. The walls here are uneven, jagged, weeping water constantly. Tiny waterfalls cascade down, splashing onto the cage, soaking anyone unlucky enough to be standing near the edge. The water is ice-cold and tastes of minerals, rust, and bad decisions. Some of it runs through old workings above, which means it's filtered through decades of coal dust and possibly past rotting timbers or worse. You try not to think about what's in the water. You also try not to get splashed. You fail at both. About halfway down, the cage passes through what miners call the wet, a section of the shaft where water pours in from an underground stream or seeping aquifer. It's like going through a waterfall. Everyone gets soaked. The water is so cold it takes your breath away. It runs down your neck, soaks through your clothes, and reminds you that you'll be cold and wet for the next 12 hours. Hope you enjoyed those 3 minutes of being merely cold. The descent seems to take forever, and no time at all. 3 minutes is the usual time from surface to pit bottom, but it feels like 30 seconds of pure terror stretched into an eternity. Your ears pop from the pressure change. Your knees lock because gripping the rail and tensing every muscle in your body seems like the only thing keeping the cage from plummeting. It's not helping, but your body doesn't care about logic right now. Someone in the back of the cage is breathing too fast, on the edge of panic. You can hear it, the quick, shallow breaths, the wheezing. Claustrophobia and fear are bad combinations in a small metal box dropping through darkness. But there's nothing anyone can do. There's nowhere to go. You just drop, and you hope the new man doesn't completely lose it, because a panicking miner in a confined space is dangerous. People have been pushed through the gaps in the railing by thrashing, terrified men who couldn't handle the descent. The darkness is absolute except for the lamps. Even with 20 lamps, the light doesn't penetrate far. The shaft is a vertical tunnel of perfect blackness, and you're falling through it like a stone down a well. Above you, the circle of grey morning sky gets smaller and smaller, shrinking to a pinpoint and then disappearing entirely as you drop below an angle where you can see it. That's it. That's the last daylight you'll see for 12 hours. The cage shudders. Something bangs against the side, loud and metallic. Everyone tenses, waiting for the drop. The cables snap, the end. But it's just the cage bouncing against a guide rail, one of the wooden or metal strips that runs down the shaft to keep the cage centered. Still, hearts are racing. Someone swears under their breath. Someone else laughs nervously, a high-pitched sound that's more panic than humour. You can hear the pit bottom now, the sounds of the mine filtering up through the shaft, voices shouting, the clatter of coal tubs on rails, the whinny of a pit pony, the thuds of pickaxes against coal. All of it echoes strangely in the shaft, distorted and amplified, like hearing a conversation through a speaking tube. It's weirdly comforting. It means you're almost down. It means the descent is nearly over. It means you haven't died. Yet. The cage slows. The winding man, operating by experience and probably a bit of prayer, applies the brake. The cage decelerates, but not smoothly. It jerks, stops, drops another few feet, jerks again. Your knees buckle with each jolt. Your hands grip the rails so hard your knuckles are white. Finally, mercifully, the cage comes to a full stop at the landing platform. For a moment, no one moves. Everyone is just breathing, grateful to be stopped, grateful to be alive, grateful that today's descent didn't end in catastrophe. Then the gate clangs open, and men start filing out, their legs shaky, some of them limping from the jarring stops. You step onto the landing platform, a wooden structure built at the pit bottom. Your legs feel weird, simultaneously like jelly and like they're vibrating. Your inner ear is confused about which way is up. You lean against a timber support for a moment, catching your breath, letting your body remember what solid ground feels like. The deputy is doing a head count, checking his list, making sure everyone who went down came down in one piece. 20 men descended, 20 men arrived. That's a good start to the shift. Last week someone fell through a gap in the cage floor that had been there for months but nobody had bothered to fix. His name was scratched off the list. A new man took his number the next day. Around you, other miners are catching their breath, adjusting their lamps, preparing for the walk to their respective seams. The pit bottom is relatively spacious, maybe 30 feet across, with tunnels radiating out in multiple directions like spokes on a wheel. Rails run along each tunnel carrying coal tubs to and from the working faces. The air here is thick, heavy with dust and moisture, and the smell of coal. You made it down. That's the first hurdle cleared. You're 900 feet below the surface, encased in rock, surrounded by darkness, breathing air that's already been breathed by 100 other men. And now comes the real work. Now you have to walk to your seam, crawl into a space too small for standing, and swing a pickaxe for 12 hours. The descent was the easy part. Welcome to the mine. It's dark. Not forgot to pay the electric bill dark. Not camping under the stars dark. This is absolute, suffocating, underground darkness that presses against your eyeballs. Your only light comes from a small oil lamp clipped to your cap, casting a weak, flickering glow that barely reaches beyond your nose. The darkness here has weight. It has presence. It's not just the absence of light. It's an entity unto itself, thick and oppressive, pushing in from all sides. Your lamp creates a tiny bubble of dim yellow illumination, maybe 3 feet in diameter, and beyond that is nothing. Pure, perfect blackness that could hide anything. Could be an empty tunnel. Could be a 100-foot drop. Could be the edge of the world. You wouldn't know until you walked into it. After stepping off the landing platform, you start the walk to your seam. The main tunnel, or roadway as they call it, is relatively spacious, about 6 feet high and maybe 8 feet wide. You can actually stand upright here, which is a luxury you'll soon miss desperately. The floor is uneven, a combination of rock, coal dust and mud that's been churned into a black slurry by thousands of boots and coal tub wheels. Every step splashes, every step threatens to twist an ankle. The walls are rough-hewn stone, dark and wet, with timber supports every few yards. These are thick wooden props and beams that hold up the roof, preventing the millions of tons of rock above from expressing their desire to be lower. The timbers creak constantly, a sound that's either reassuring because it means they're under tension and doing their job, or terrifying because it means they're under tension and might fail. Miners can't agree on which interpretation is correct. Water drips constantly from the roof, not a gentle mist but fat, heavy drops that fall without warning, finding the gap between your collar and your neck with uncanny accuracy. The water is cold, shockingly cold, and it runs down your spine like icy fingers. Within minutes your back is soaked. Within an hour everything is soaked. You'll spend the next 12 hours wet, cold and miserable. Just another day in paradise. The air down here is thick, that's the only way to describe it. Thick with coal dust that hangs suspended like black fog. Thick with moisture that makes every breath feel like drinking. Thick with the smell of coal, wet stone, timber, horse manure and human sweat. It coats your throat. It fills your lungs. It becomes part of you with every inhalation. By the end of your shift, you'll have breathed in enough coal dust to fill a small bucket. Your lungs are slowly turning into coal. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what's happening. As you walk deeper into the mine, the tunnel begins to slope downward. You're heading to a seam that's at a lower level, which means gravity is against you on the way in and for you on the way out. That sounds good until you remember that coming back you'll be exhausted, and gravity will just make you fall faster when you inevitably trip over something in the dark. Other miners pass you going the opposite direction, pushing empty coal tubs toward the working faces. The tubs are metal carts on small wheels that run on rails, each holding about half a ton of coal when full. The men pushing them are bent over, straining, their boots slipping in the mud, their breath coming in harsh gasps. Moving coal is its own special kind of hell. You're grateful your job is just hacking it out of the wall. Someone else can worry about moving it. You pass side tunnels, smaller offshoots that lead to abandoned workings or seams that have been mined out. Some are boarded up, some aren't. They're just open mouths of darkness leading to forgotten places where men used to work and sometimes died. Occasionally you hear sounds from these abandoned tunnels, dripping water, the shift of settling rock, or sometimes something else. Something you tell yourself is just your imagination. Mines are full of ghosts. Everyone knows that. Whether they're literal ghosts or just the memory of dead miners, nobody's quite sure. The tunnel narrows. Now it's maybe 5 feet high, and you have to duck your head, hunching your shoulders. Your back immediately starts to complain. This is the posture you'll maintain for hours, bent over, never quite upright, your spine curved in a way the human body was never designed for. There's a reason older miners walk permanently stooped. Their spines have been compressed and bent by years of this, reshaping their skeletons into a question mark. Rats scatter as you approach, their eyes glowing briefly in your lamplight before they disappear into crevices. The rats down here are huge, well fed on spilled lunches, and any miner unlucky enough to die and not be found quickly. They're bold too, unafraid of humans. They've been known to nibble on sleeping men, chew through lunch bags, and generally act like they own the place. Which, to be fair, they kind of do. They've certainly been here longer than you. You reach a junction where your tunnel intersects with another. The deputy is there, checking his roster, directing men to their assigned faces. He nods at you, points down a particularly narrow passage to the left. That's your seam. Of course it is. It's always the worst one. The passage is maybe 3 feet high. You're going to be crawling. Or rather, you're going to be doing something between crawling and duck walking, an awkward shuffle on your hands and knees that will destroy your joints by the time you're 40. You drop to your knees, the wet ground immediately soaking through your trousers, and start crawling. Your lamp swings wildly, making shadows dance across the walls. The tunnel is barely wider than your shoulders. The roof is so low you can't lift your head. This is what the coal seam looks like at your mine. A thin layer of coal sandwiched between layers of rock, and the only way to get to it is to crawl through a tunnel that feels less like a workplace and more like a tomb. The walls press in. You can touch both sides at once if you stretch your arms out. The roof touches your back. This is what claustrophobia feels like, being surrounded by rock, enclosed in stone, knowing that millions of tons of earth are above you, held up by increasingly questionable timber and hope. Your breathing speeds up. You fight the urge to panic, to turn around, to scramble back the way you came. You can't. There's no room to turn around. The only way is forward. After 50 yards of crawling, 50 yards that feel like 500, the tunnel opens slightly into what's called a working face. This is your office for the next 12 hours. It's a small chamber, maybe 10 feet wide, 4 feet high, and about 6 feet deep, carved out of the coal seam. The coal face itself is in front of you, a shiny black wall of fuel waiting to be hacked out. Behind you, the narrow tunnel you just crawled through. No other exits, no escape routes. Just this small bubble of space in the suffocating darkness of the mine. Your tools are here, left from yesterday's shift. A pickaxe, its handle worn smooth from years of use. A shovel for loading the coal, a hand drill and some wedges for when you need to split larger chunks. All of them are old, all of them are barely functional, and all of them are the only thing standing between you and unemployment. This is it. This is where you'll spend your day. In a space too small to stand, too cramped to stretch, working by the light of a lamp that could go out at any moment, surrounded by darkness so complete that you could disappear and no one would find you for hours. The mine has swallowed you whole, you're in its belly now, and it's not letting go until your shift ends, if you're lucky. The roof creaks ominously. A few small stones patter down, bouncing off your cap. The timber props groan under the weight they're holding. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the rumble of a roof fall in another section. Someone's day just got a lot worse, or ended entirely. You position yourself in front of the coal face, adjust your lamp so it illuminates the area you'll be working on, and grip your pickaxe. The handle is cold, damp, rough. Your hands are already stiff from the temperature down here. Your back is already aching from the crawl-in. Your lungs are already burning from the dust, and you haven't even started working yet. You take a deep breath, immediately regret it as coal dust fills your lungs and triggers a coughing fit, and raise the pickaxe. Time to mine some coal. Time to break your body systematically for the next 12 hours. Time to prove that you're willing to suffer more than the next man just to earn enough to keep your family from starving. The darkness presses in. The silence is broken only by your breathing, the drip of water, and the distant sounds of other miners already at work. You're alone down here, alone in the dark. Alone with the coal and the rats and the very real possibility that today might be the day the roof decides it's had enough. Welcome to work. Your job is simple in concept, brutal in execution. You hack away at the coal seam with a pickaxe, swing after swing after swing. Your back is bent because the tunnel is only 4 feet high. You can't stand, you can't stretch. You crouch, you kneel, you crawl, and you swing that pickaxe until your shoulders scream. The coal seam in front of you is about 3 feet thick, a layer of compressed ancient plant matter sandwiched between layers of hard rock. The coal itself varies in quality. Some of it is hard and dense, some of it is softer and crumbles easily, and some of it is riddled with bands of stone that will destroy your pickaxe and your will to live. You never know what you're going to get until the pick hits it. You start at the bottom of the seam, working a technique called undercutting. The idea is to hack away at the base of the coal face, creating a cavity underneath, and then bring down the coal above in larger chunks. It's more efficient than chipping away at the whole face randomly. It's also more dangerous because you're essentially undermining a wall that could collapse on you at any moment. But efficiency matters more than safety, because you're paid by the ton, not by the hour. The first swing of the pickaxe sends vibrations up your arms. The impact rattles your teeth, jolts your already aching shoulders, and produces exactly one small chip of coal that falls to the floor. Congratulations. Only about 2,000 more swings to go before you've filled a tub. The coal doesn't want to come out. It's been compressed under millions of tons of rock for 300 million years. It's comfortable where it is. You're asking it to leave through violence, and it's not cooperating. You swing again, and again, and again. Each swing requires you to raise the pickaxe over your head, or as far over your head as the 4-foot ceiling allows, and bring it down with as much force as you can muster from a kneeling position. It's an awkward motion that uses every muscle wrong. Your shoulders burn, your lower back screams, your knees, pressed into the wet stone floor, feel like they're being driven through the earth itself. The rhythm becomes automatic. Raise, swing, impact. Raise, swing, impact. Raise, swing, impact. It's hypnotic in the worst way. Your mind goes blank. Reduced to the simple repetition of violence against stone. You're not thinking about your family or your future or anything meaningful. You're just a machine that converts human suffering into coal. Swing, swing, swing. The coalface fights back. Sometimes your pick hits a hard spot, a band of ironstone or a section of particularly dense coal, and the impact is like hitting an iron bar. The shock travels up the handle, through your hands, into your arms, jarring your whole body. Your hands go numb, your grip loosens. You have to stop, shake out your hands, try to get feeling back into your fingers, and then start again. Sometimes the pick hits a soft spot and goes straight through, embedding itself in the coal. Then you have to wrestle it back out, leveraging your body weight, which is considerable because you haven't eaten a decent meal in weeks, against the pick handle. The pick comes free suddenly, throwing you backward, and you smash your head against the low roof. Stars explode behind your eyes. Your cap, which was supposed to protect you, does nothing because it's made of cloth. You lie there for a moment, stunned, tasting blood, wondering why you do this. Then you remember. Starvation. Right. Back to work. The dust. Oh God, the dust. Every swing of the pickaxe releases a cloud of coal dust into the air. Fine, black particles that hang suspended in the still underground atmosphere, illuminated by your lamp like 1,000 tiny demons dancing. You breathe it in because you have no choice. There are no masks, no respirators, no protection of any kind. You just breathe coal dust for 12 hours and hope your lungs can handle it. Spoiler, they can't. Within an hour you're coughing constantly. A dry, hacking cough that brings up black phlegm. You spit it onto the floor where it joins the general slurry of coal dust, rock chips and groundwater. The floor of your working area is becoming a toxic soup, and you're kneeling in it, your trousers soaked through, the cold and wet seeping into your bones. Your hands are already blistering. The pickaxe handle, worn smooth by generations of miners, still manages to create friction. The skin on your palms tears, raw patches appearing where the wood has rubbed away flesh. Soon you'll have calluses thick enough to stop bullets. But first you have to get through the blistering phase, where every swing feels like gripping broken glass. After an hour of swinging, you've created a cavity about 1 foot deep and 3 feet wide at the base of the coal seam. Good progress. Now comes the terrifying part. You need to bring down the coal above. You could keep chipping away at it, which would take hours, or you can try to bring it down in one go, which is faster but risks bringing down more than just coal, like the roof, or your skull. You take your hand drill, a long metal spike with a handle, and start drilling holes into the coal above the undercut. The process is medieval. You hold the drill against the coal with one hand and hit the back of it with a hammer with the other, rotating the drill slightly after each hit. Bang, turn, bang, turn, bang, turn. It's loud, repetitive, and exhausting. Your shoulder, already screaming from swinging the pickaxe, now gets to experience the joy of hammering a drill for 20 minutes. Once you've drilled several holes, you drive wedges into them. Metal or wooden wedges that you hammer in, creating pressure, trying to split the coal along its natural fracture lines. The theory is that the coal will crack along these lines and fall in manageable chunks. The reality is more chaotic. You hammer the wedges in and nothing happens. You hammer more, still nothing. Then suddenly, with no warning, a massive slab of coal breaks free and crashes down, barely missing your head. The slab is too big. It's a chunk of coal maybe 3 feet across and 6 inches thick, weighing probably 80 pounds. You need to break it into smaller pieces before you can load it into the tub, so you attack it with your pick, breaking it down, each blow sending fresh clouds of dust into the air, each impact reverberating through your already traumatized hands. Finally, the coal is in manageable pieces. Now you have to load it. You set down your pickaxe and pick up your shovel. The shovel is a flat, wide thing designed for coal, not dirt. You scoop up the coal chunks and throw them into the tub that sits on the rails behind you. Each shovelful weighs maybe 10 pounds. You need to fill the tub with half a ton of coal. That's 100 shovelfuls. And you need to do this while kneeling or crouching because, again, you can't stand up. Your back, which was already unhappy about the pickaxe work, is now in open rebellion. Shoveling from a kneeling position uses muscles that humans don't have, or if they do have them, they're not meant to be used this way. You're twisting, lifting, throwing, all while bent at an unnatural angle. Something in your spine makes a crunching sound. You ignore it. Everyone's spine makes crunching sounds down here. The coal tub sits on rails, and when it's full, you have to push it out of your working area and into the main tunnel where a hurrier, usually a child or teenager, will take it to the pit bottom. Pushing a half-ton tub of coal through a 3-foot-high tunnel while crawling is exactly as difficult as it sounds. You push with your shoulders, your back, your legs, anything that still works. The tub barely moves. The wheels stick in the mud. You swear, you strain, you push harder, and finally it budges. Once the tub is out, you crawl back to your working face and start all over again. Pickaxe, undercut, drill, wedge, break, shovel, push, Pete. You'll do this cycle maybe 6 or 7 times during your 12-hour shift if you're fast and the coal is cooperative. Each cycle fills 1 tub. Each tub is about half a ton. You're paid by the ton, minus deductions for slate or stone mixed in with the coal, minus fines for any imagined infractions, minus the cost of your tools and lamp oil. At the end of a good week, you might take home enough to keep your family fed. At the end of a bad week, you might owe the company money. The system is designed to keep you poor, keep you desperate, and keep you coming back to this hole in the ground day after day. Your lamp flickers. You freeze. A flickering lamp could mean the oil is running low, which is annoying but fixable. Or it could mean there's bad air, methane or carbon dioxide, which is deadly. You watch the flame carefully. It stays yellow, doesn't change colour, doesn't go out. Just a bit of dust in the air disrupting the flame. You breathe again. You can't afford to waste time worrying about dying. You need to worry about not starving. You swing the pickaxe again. Your hands are bleeding now, the blisters having burst. Raw flesh exposed to the coal dust and dirty water. It stings. Everything stings. Everything hurts. Your back, your knees, your hands, your shoulders, your lungs. There's not a part of your body that isn't in some degree of pain, but you keep swinging. Because that's the job. That's what coal mining is. It's not romantic. It's not noble. It's just brutal, repetitive, dangerous labour that destroys your body piece by piece, shift by shift, until there's nothing left but a coughing, broken shell of a man. And you've only been working for 2 hours. 10 more to go. Let's talk about the air down here. Actually calling it air is generous. It's more like a toxic soup of coal dust, methane and disappointment. Every breath feels like inhaling sandpaper. Your lungs burn, your throat is constantly coated in black grime. You cough, everyone coughs, all the time, a symphony of hacking that echoes through the tunnels. The ventilation system in the mine consists of 2 shafts, one for air to go down, one for air to come up, with massive fans at the surface pushing fresh air through the workings. In theory, this creates a continuous flow that keeps the air breathable and prevents the buildup of dangerous gases. In theory. In practice, you're working in a dead-end tunnel off a side passage off a main roadway, and the fresh air has to travel through miles of tunnels to reach you. By the time it gets here, it's already been breathed by 50 other miners, filtered through coal dust, and mixed with whatever gases are seeping out of the coal seam. What you're breathing is air that's maybe 60% as oxygen-rich as surface air. The rest is nitrogen, carbon dioxide, coal dust, and trace amounts of gases that would kill you quickly if their concentrations were just a bit higher. Your body is in a constant state of mild suffocation. Your heart works harder to pump oxygen-depleted blood. Your lungs strain to extract what little oxygen is available. You're tired all the time, not just from the work, but from the simple act of trying to breathe. The coal dust is the worst part. It's not like dust on a shelf that you can wipe away. This is microscopic particles of coal suspended in the air like a black fog. You can see it in the beam of your lamp swirling and dancing, beautiful in the way toxic things often are. Each particle is small enough to bypass your body's natural defences, your nose hairs, your mucous membranes, and lodge deep in your lungs. With every breath, you're inhaling hundreds of these particles. They settle in your lungs like black snow, accumulating over months and years, Your lungs, which started out pink and healthy, are slowly turning black. The medical term is pneumoconiosis. The colloquial term is black lung. The practical term is slow suffocation. Your lungs are becoming less like lungs and more like bags of coal dust, their ability to transfer oxygen diminishing with every shift you work. You can feel it happening. Not dramatically, not all at once, but gradually. Each year, climbing the stairs at home gets a little harder. Each year you catch your breath a little less quickly. Each year the coughing gets worse. Old miners, the ones in their 40s and 50s who've survived this long, can barely walk across a room without stopping to wheeze. They cough up black phlegm by the cupful. They suffocate in slow motion, drowning in their own ruined lungs. That's your future, assuming you live that long. But the coal dust isn't the only airborne danger down here. There's also methane, or fire damp as the miners call it. Methane seeps out of the coal seam naturally, an invisible odourless gas that's lighter than air and highly explosive. It accumulates in the upper parts of tunnels, in dead-end workings, in poorly ventilated areas. And when it reaches the right concentration, between 5 and 15% in air, all it needs is a spark. Your safety lamp is designed to prevent this. The Davy lamp keeps the flame contained behind wire mesh, which is supposed to absorb the heat and prevent it from igniting methane outside the lamp. When you enter an area with methane, the flame changes colour, burns blue or elongates, warning you to get out or improve the ventilation. This works great until it doesn't, until someone's lamp glass is cracked, until someone opens their lamp to relight it, until someone does something stupid because they're exhausted and not thinking clearly after 10 hours of labour. Then the methane ignites. And when methane explodes in a coal mine, it doesn't just burn. It creates a pressure wave that travels through the tunnels at incredible speed, collapsing lungs, breaking bodies, and often igniting the coal dust that's suspended in the air. That's when you get a coal dust explosion, a secondary explosion that's far more devastating than the initial methane ignition. The pressure wave and flames roar through the mine, killing everyone in their path. Men are found afterward, sometimes barely burned, killed by the pressure wave rupturing their organs. Others are incinerated completely, reduced to ash. This happens, not every day, but often enough that everyone knows someone who died in an explosion. Often enough that you've been trained to watch your lamp flame carefully, to report any changes, to evacuate if the flame starts acting strange. Often enough that every miner has nightmares about being trapped underground when the air ignites. Then there's afterdamp, the toxic gases produced after an explosion or fire. Carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, a mixture that's invisible and odourless and will kill you just as dead as an explosion, only slower. After a fire or explosion, afterdamp can linger in sealed-off sections for days or weeks. Rescue workers entering to search for survivors or bodies have to be careful not to become victims themselves. And let's not forget black damp, or choke damp, a mixture of carbon dioxide and nitrogen that occurs when oxygen is depleted. It accumulates in poorly ventilated areas, in old workings, in low spots where it pools like invisible water. Walk into a pocket of black damp and you simply pass out. If you're alone, you die. If you're with others, maybe they drag you out in time, maybe they don't. Maybe they follow you in and pass out too, and then you all die together in a pile. The air you're breathing right now in your working face is thick with coal dust. You can taste it. It coats your tongue, your teeth, the inside of your cheeks. When you spit, it's black. When you blow your nose, which you can't really do because you don't have a handkerchief, just your sleeve, what comes out is black. Your snot is black. Your phlegm is black. Everything is black. Your throat is raw from the dust and from the constant coughing. Every breath irritates it further. You try to breathe through your nose to filter some of the dust, but your nose is clogged with coal dust. You try to breathe through the scarf wrapped around your face, but the scarf is already saturated with dust and just makes breathing harder. So you breathe through your mouth, great gulps of toxic air, because you need oxygen more than you need to protect your lungs. The temperature doesn't help. The air down here is cold and damp, which makes it heavier, makes it sit in your lungs like wet cement. Cold air can hold less oxygen than warm air, so you're already working with a deficit. Your body is burning calories, generating heat, demanding oxygen, and the air is giving you the bare minimum to stay conscious. You're also dehydrated. The work is hard. You're sweating despite the cold. And there's no water down here. Well, there's water everywhere, dripping from the roof, pooling on the floor, running down the walls, but it's contaminated with coal dust, minerals, and God knows what else. Drinking it will give you dysentery at best, kill you at worst, so you don't drink. You just work in a state of mild dehydration, which makes everything harder, makes your blood thicker, makes your heart work even harder to supply oxygen to your muscles. The sound of coughing is constant. It's the background music of the mine. Someone's always coughing. Sometimes it's a dry cough, just coal dust irritation. Sometimes it's a wet cough, bringing up phlegm and blood. Sometimes it's a deep, rattling cough that sounds like death clearing its throat. The coughs echo through the tunnels, bouncing off stone walls, creating a chorus of suffering that never stops. You cough. The man in the next working face coughs. Someone farther down the tunnel coughs. It's contagious, not because of disease, though there's plenty of that too, but because hearing someone cough makes you aware of the irritation in your own throat, triggers your own cough reflex. Soon the whole section is coughing, a chain reaction of respiratory distress. Some men develop chronic bronchitis, a constant inflammation of the airways that makes every breath a wheeze. Others develop emphysema, their lung tissue breaking down, their lungs becoming less elastic, less able to expel air. Still others develop silicosis from the rock dust, or tuberculosis which spreads easily in the close, airless confines of the mine, or any number of other respiratory diseases that Victorian medicine has no cure for. The air is killing you. Slowly, imperceptibly, but certainly. Every breath is doing damage. Every shift compounds it. You're trading your lungs for coal, your breath for wages, your future for survival today. It's not a good trade, but it's the only one available. You swing your pickaxe and cough. You shovel coal and cough. You push the tub and cough. Coughing is just part of the job now, like swinging the pick or getting soaked or being cold. It's one more misery in a catalogue of miseries, one more way the mine is destroying you. The worst part is knowing it's cumulative. Every breath of coal dust adds to the burden in your lungs. There's no healing, no recovery. Your lungs don't repair themselves between shifts. The damage just accumulates, year after year, until one day you realise you can't breathe anymore. Until one day you're coughing up blood. Until one day you're drowning on dry land, your lungs so full of scar tissue and coal dust that they can't function. But that's a problem for future you. Present you needs to keep breathing, keep working, keep swinging that pickaxe. So you take another breath of toxic air, ignore the burning in your chest, suppress the cough rising in your throat and get back to work. Just 10 more hours of breathing death to go. Here's something nobody tells you about coal mines. They're not just dark and dangerous, they're also freezing. Despite being hundreds of feet underground, winter seeps through the rock like a vindictive ghost. The stone walls are cold to the touch. Water seeps constantly, collecting in icy puddles that soak through your boots. People have this idea that underground means warm. They imagine the Earth's core radiating heat, creating cosy caverns where miners work in tropical comfort. Those people have never been to a coal mine in northern England in January. The temperature down here hovers somewhere around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That might not sound terrible until you remember you're soaking wet, working in a draft, and wearing clothes that haven't been dry since autumn. The cold is insidious. It's not the dramatic, in-your-face cold of standing outside in a blizzard. It's a slow, creeping cold that gets into your bones and stays there. The stone walls, the floor, the roof, everything is cold and damp. Touch the wall and your hand comes away wet and numb. Kneel on the floor and the cold seeps through your trousers into your knees. Rest your back against a timber support and the chill spreads across your spine like ice water. And you're wet. Constantly. Completely wet. The water dripping from the roof has soaked your clothes. The puddles you're kneeling in have saturated your trousers. Your sweat from swinging the pickaxe has drenched your shirt. There's no such thing as staying dry down here. And wet clothes in 40-degree temperatures is a recipe for hypothermia, except you can't get hypothermia because you're working too hard, generating too much body heat. So instead you exist in this miserable middle ground. Too cold to be comfortable, too active to shut down completely. Your hands are the worst. Your gloves, thin leather things with holes in the fingers, offer minimal protection. They're wet, which makes them useless as insulation. Your hands are numb, fingers stiff and uncooperative. Gripping the pickaxe requires concentration because you can't really feel your hands anymore. You just have to trust they're doing what you're telling them to do. Sometimes you miss and hit your own leg with the pick because your hands didn't grip properly. That's a fun way to start your morning, blood mixing with coal dust on your thigh. The cold makes everything harder. Your muscles are stiff, reluctant to move. Your joints ache, knees and shoulders protesting every motion. The pickaxe feels heavier because your muscles aren't working efficiently in the cold. Your body is diverting blood flow to your core to keep your vital organs warm, which means your extremities, your hands, your feet, your fingers, your toes, are left to fend for themselves. They're losing the battle. Your feet have been numb for hours. You stopped feeling your toes around 7 a.m, and it's now mid-morning. You're standing, well, kneeling, in water that's probably close to freezing. Your boots, which were never waterproof to begin with, are full of icy water. It sloshes around with every movement. Your socks are soaked. Your feet are wrinkled, pale, and completely without sensation. You have no idea if you're getting frostbite. You won't know until you take your boots off at the end of the shift, and by then, it'll be too late to do anything about it. The draft makes everything worse. The ventilation system that's supposed to keep you alive by providing fresh air also ensures you're constantly in a breeze. Cold air flows through the tunnels drawn by the fans at the surface, and it flows right through your working face. It's like working in front of an open refrigerator. The air movement prevents your body heat from creating any kind of warm bubble around you. Any heat you generate is immediately stripped away by the moving air. Some parts of the mine are worse than others. Working faces near the downcast shaft, where cold surface air is being pumped in, are absolutely frigid. The air coming down in winter is well below freezing, and it doesn't warm up much travelling through the tunnels. Working in those sections is like working in a walk-in freezer. Men beg to be assigned to other areas. They rarely are. The irony is that you're working incredibly hard, burning massive amounts of calories, generating significant body heat through sheer physical labour. Your core temperature is probably fine, maybe even elevated. You're sweating, but your extremities are freezing. Your body has made the calculation: keep the organs alive, sacrifice the fingers and toes if necessary. It's a brutal piece of evolutionary logic that means you can be hot and cold simultaneously, sweating and shivering at the same time. You've seen men develop chilblains, painful inflammation of the small blood vessels in the skin, caused by repeated exposure to cold. The fingers and toes swell, turn red or purple, become intensely itchy and painful. The tissue can become damaged permanently. Some men lose feeling in their fingers permanently, the nerves destroyed by repeated cold exposure. They can still work, but they can't feel what they're touching, which leads to injuries, cuts they don't notice, broken fingers they don't realise are broken until they see the weird angle. Trench foot is another problem, though down here they call it pit foot. It's what happens when your feet are wet and cold for extended periods. The skin breaks down, becomes macerated, develops sores and lesions. In severe cases, the tissue dies and gangrene sets in. You've seen men hobbling around with rotting feet, the smell unmistakable even in a mine that already smells terrible. They keep working because they can't afford not to. They work until the infection spreads enough to kill them, or until someone finally agrees to amputate. The cold also affects your equipment. The pickaxe handle is slippery with condensation and ice. Your lamp, which burns oil, struggles in the cold. The oil becomes viscous, doesn't flow as well, and the flame burns dimmer. On the coldest days, some lamps refuse to stay lit. The flame gutters and dies, plunging the miner into absolute darkness until he can crawl to someone else's lamp and relight his own. There's no warming up, no break room with a heater, no hot coffee to wrap your hands around, no chance to dry off or thaw out. You're cold when you start your shift, and you stay cold for 12 hours straight. The only variation is between miserably cold and dangerously cold. When you stop swinging the pickaxe to rest for a moment, you start shivering almost immediately. Your body temperature drops without the constant exertion, and the cold rushes in like it was waiting for this exact moment. Eating lunch in these conditions is its own special misery. You sit down on a cold rock, your body immediately starting to shiver, and you pull out your snap tin. The bread inside is rock hard, frozen from being in your pocket in 40-degree temperatures for 6 hours. The cheese, if you have any, is also frozen. You try to eat it anyway because you need the calories, but biting into frozen bread with teeth that are already aching from the cold is an exercise in suffering. Some men tuck their lunch inside their shirt against their body, hoping body heat will keep it from freezing. It doesn't really work, but it's better than nothing. The metal tools are particularly brutal. In the cold, metal becomes a heat sink, drawing warmth from whatever touches it. Grip the pickaxe handle where the metal head connects to the wood, and it feels like touching dry ice. The shovel, all metal, is painful to hold. Some men wrap rags around the handles trying to create insulation. The rags get wet and freeze, becoming stiff with ice. Then you're gripping ice instead of metal. Not really an improvement. Your breath is visible, white clouds in the lamplight, proof that it's cold enough to see your exhalations. In the worst sections, the moisture in your breath freezes on your scarf or your moustache. Ice crystals form on facial hair, making you look like a very sad underground Father Christmas. The scarf around your neck freezes stiff, becoming a rigid collar that chafes your skin. The worst is when you have to crawl through water. Sometimes the tunnels flood partially, or there's a particularly low section where water has accumulated. You have to crawl through it, plunging your body into water that's barely above freezing. It takes your breath away. Your muscles seize. For a moment you genuinely think you might die. Then you push through, emerging on the other side soaked and gasping, and somehow you have to keep working. There's no changing into dry clothes. There are no dry clothes. You just continue your shift, dripping and shivering, hoping you generate enough body heat to avoid hypothermia. Some miners develop chronic conditions from the constant cold and wet. Arthritis sets in early, joints inflamed and painful, worsening with every cold, damp shift. Rheumatism is epidemic. Men in their 30s move like they're 60, joints stiff and swollen, every movement painful. The cold has gotten into their bones, literally, and it never leaves. At the end of the shift, when you finally climb back into the cage and rise toward the surface, the temperature barely changes. It's winter up there too. You emerge from the mine into cold air, your wet clothes immediately starting to freeze in the wind. The walk home is torture. You're exhausted, soaked, and now exposed to actual winter weather. Your clothes stiffen as they freeze. Your hair freezes. You're becoming a human icicle, shuffling through the streets toward a home that's barely warmer than the mine. The cold is relentless. It's there when you wake up, when you work, when you try to sleep. It's in your bones, your joints, your soul. You're never truly warm. The best you can hope for is occasionally less cold. And tomorrow, you'll do it all over again. Another 12 hours in the freezing dark, swinging a pickaxe with numb hands, kneeling in ice water, and slowly, steadily, letting the cold destroy your body one shift at a time. At least hell is supposed to be hot. You're never alone down here. The rats see to that. Big, bold, and utterly unafraid, they scurry through the tunnels like they own the place. And honestly, they kind of do. They're everywhere, nibbling at lunch tins, squeaking in the darkness, occasionally running over your foot while you're trying to work. These aren't the small, skittish rats you might see in an alley. These are mine rats, a breed unto themselves. They're massive, some the size of small cats, with sleek, well-fed bodies and eyes that glow an eerie red when your lamp catches them. They've evolved to thrive down here, in the darkness and the damp, feeding on spilled lunches, dead pit ponies, and occasionally dead miners if nobody finds the body quickly enough. It's not personal, it's just ecology. The rats are so numerous that you can hear them constantly. A chorus of squeaking, scratching, and scurrying that forms a background soundtrack to your work. Sometimes you hear them fighting over food, their shrieks echoing through the tunnels like tiny demons settling territorial disputes. Sometimes you hear them in the walls, or what passes for walls down here, scratching and gnawing at timber supports. Whether they're actually weakening the supports or just making noise is unclear. Either way, it's not comforting. They have no fear. None. A surface rat will flee from humans, a mine rat will stare you down, you'll be swinging your pickaxe and you'll see one sitting on a rock 3 feet away, just watching you work like it's conducting a performance review. It's unnerving. You wave your arms, shout at it, and it might saunter away slowly like it's doing you a favour. Or it might not move at all. It might just sit there, judging you, its whiskers twitching. The worst is when they run over you. You're kneeling in the dark, focused on your work, and suddenly something furry and substantial is sprinting across your back, or your leg, or, in one memorable occasion that you'll never forget, across your face. They don't do it to be malicious. You're just in their way. They're going somewhere, you're an obstacle, and they have no concept of personal space. You yelp, flail, lose your grip on your pickaxe, and the rat is already gone, disappeared into the darkness like a hairy ghost. They're attracted to food, obviously. Your lunch tin is a beacon of hope in their otherwise coal dust-filled existence. If you set it down and turn your back, they're on it instantly. You learn quickly to keep your tin on your person at all times. Some men tie them to their belts with string, others tuck them inside their shirts. But the rats are persistent and clever. They've been known to chew through metal tins if given enough time and motivation. During lunch break, when you sit down to eat your frozen bread and dubious cheese, the rats gather. They form a little audience sitting just outside your lamp's glow, watching and waiting. You can see their eyes reflecting the light, dozens of tiny red points in the darkness surrounding you. It's like dining in front of a very patient, very hungry tribunal. You eat quickly, guarding your food, because if you drop a crumb, 3 rats will materialize out of nowhere to fight over it. Some miners try to befriend the rats. They'll save bits of their lunch, toss them to the same rat every day, give it a name. There's old Bert, a particularly large specimen who's been in this section for years. There's 3 Toes, who's missing part of a foot from some unknown accident. There's the General, who seems to command the other rats, and always gets first choice of any dropped food. These pet rats aren't really pets. They're more like co-workers who happen to be rodents, and who would absolutely eat you if you died down here. The rats serve a purpose, though. Beyond just providing nightmare fuel, they're a warning system. Rats have a supernatural ability to sense danger. Before a roof collapse, the rats disappear. Before a gas build-up reaches dangerous levels, the rats leave. Smart miners pay attention to the rats. If you're working and suddenly notice all the rats have vanished, you should probably also leave. The rats know something you don't, and what they know is usually death is imminent. There's an old saying in the mines, when the rats run, you run. It's saved lives. Men have evacuated sections minutes before catastrophic collapses because they noticed the rats fleeing. The rats don't care about the miners, they're not trying to save anyone, but their instinct for self-preservation is better calibrated than any safety equipment the mine owners have provided. Which is to say, the rats are more reliable than management, but the rats also spread disease. They carry fleas, lice, and various pathogens that thrive in the unsanitary conditions of the mine. Miners develop infections from rat bites. Some contract leptospirosis, a bacterial disease spread through rat urine, which contaminates the water pooling on the tunnel floors. The same water you're kneeling in. The same water that's soaked through your trousers and is now in contact with any cuts or scrapes on your legs. It's a wonderful system. The rats also create a sanitation problem, though calling anything down here sanitation is generous. There's no toilet in the mine. When nature calls, you find a corner, a side tunnel, or just a discreet spot and do your business. The rats find these spots too. They're attracted to the waste. So now you have areas of the mine that are both human toilets and rat feeding grounds. Walking through these sections requires careful foot placement and a strong stomach. Some rats have adapted to specific niches in the mine ecosystem. There are rats that live primarily near the stables, feeding on spilled oats and horse manure. There are rats that haunt the pit bottom, scavenging from the lunch tins and food scraps that accumulate there. And there are rats that live deep in the workings, in abandoned sections, growing to enormous sizes on God knows what, becoming legends whispered about during lunch breaks. I saw a rat as big as a dog down in the old eastern seam. Nah, I heard there's one down there the size of a sheep. These stories are probably exaggerated. Probably. The rats also make noise at night, or what passes for night down here where time is meaningless. If you're working a late shift, or if you're unfortunate enough to get trapped underground overnight due to a breakdown in the winding equipment, you'll hear the rats come alive. The squeaking intensifies. The scurrying becomes more frantic. It's like they have a night shift too, and their night shift involves running around like maniacs, fighting, mating, and generally making as much noise as possible. Trying to sleep down here, surrounded by the sound of dozens of rats doing rat things in the darkness just beyond your lamp's reach, is an experience you don't forget. Some miners develop an almost philosophical relationship with the rats. You spend 12 hours a day with them. You see them more than you see your own children. In a weird way, they're companions. Fellow sufferers in the darkness. They're just trying to survive down here, same as you. Except they're better at it. They're faster, more adaptable, and they'll definitely outlive you. When you eventually die of black lung or a roof fall or an explosion, the rats will still be here, scurrying through the tunnels, chewing on timber, and thriving in conditions that destroy humans. There's something almost admirable about them. They've taken the absolute worst environment, dark, cold, damp, toxic, dangerous, and not just survived but flourished. They've built an entire civilization down here, in the dark, feeding on scraps and corpses and stolen lunches. They don't complain. They don't go on strike. They just exist, persistent and unkillable, like the mine itself. You swing your pickaxe and a rat scurries past. You take a drink from your water bottle and you see rats watching from the shadows. You sit down to rest and within seconds you're surrounded by rats waiting to see if you'll drop anything edible. They're always there, always watching, always waiting. In a way, they're the only honest creatures in the mine. They don't pretend this is anything other than what it is. A harsh, brutal place where survival is the only goal. They don't dress it up with talk of honest work or dignity of labour. They just eat, breed and avoid death for as long as possible. You've come to respect them, in a strange way. Not like them exactly. You definitely don't like them, but respect them. They're survivors. And down here, in the cold and the dark and the dust, survival is the highest achievement. You hear squeaking behind you. You don't even turn around anymore, it's just the rats, your underground roommates, your constant companions, the only living things down here that seem to have figured out how to actually thrive. Lucky bastards. Deep in the mine you'll find the pit ponies. These small, sturdy horses are brought down as foals and spend years, sometimes their entire lives, underground, pulling coal carts through the narrow tunnels. They rarely, if ever, see daylight. Their world is darkness, stone, and endless labour. The ponies are Welsh cobs, Shetlands, or Dales ponies, breeds chosen for their small stature, strength, and temperament. They're brought down in the cage, terrified and confused when they're young enough to adapt to underground life. The descent is traumatic. Imagine being a young horse, suddenly surrounded by darkness, dropping hundreds of feet in a rattling metal cage, and then being led into tunnels where the roof is barely high enough to clear your head. Many panic. Some injure themselves thrashing against the cage, but they adapt. They have to. Once underground, many of these ponies never see the surface again. It's too expensive and logistically complicated to bring them up and down daily. So they live in underground stables, carved out of the rock near the main roadways. These stables are dark, damp, and barely adequate. A wooden stall, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, with a manger for hay and oats. No windows, no natural light, no grass, no sky. Just stone walls, a coal dust floor, and the constant drip of water. The ponies spend their days hauling coal tubs from the working faces to the pit bottom. They're hitched to trains of tubs, sometimes as many as 4 or 5 at once, each loaded with half a ton of coal. That's 2 tons of coal plus the weight of the metal tubs themselves. The pony has to pull this through tunnels that are often slippery with mud and water, sometimes uphill, always in near total darkness. They navigate by memory and touch. A pony learns its route after a few weeks, which tunnel to take, where to turn, where the roof dips low, where the floor is uneven. They're remarkably intelligent. Some ponies know their routes so well they'll stop automatically at the right intersections, waiting for direction from their driver before proceeding. Others know exactly when their shift is over and will refuse to make another trip, stubbornly standing still no matter how much the driver cajoles or curses. The drivers are usually boys, children between 10 and 14 who walk alongside or behind the ponies, guiding them through the tunnels. These boys develop relationships with their ponies. They learn each animal's personality, which ones are patient, which are stubborn, which startle easily at sudden noises. Some boys genuinely care for their ponies, saving bits of their own meagre lunches to share, speaking softly to them, patting their necks in the darkness. Others are cruel, beating the ponies with sticks, kicking them when they're slow, treating them as machines rather than living creatures. The ponies work 8-hour shifts usually. That's the theory. In practice, during busy periods, they work longer. They pull load after load, their hooves slipping on wet stone, their shoulders straining against the harness, their breath coming in laboured snorts. They develop sores where the harness rubs. They develop lung problems from breathing coal dust, just like the miners. They go lame from the constant walking on uneven surfaces. When they're too injured or sick to work, they're usually shot. Right there in the mine. Their bodies are either hauled to the surface or more commonly left to decompose in a sealed-off side tunnel. The ponies can't see well in the dark. Their eyes, adapted for daylight, struggle in the dim glow of the miners' lamps. They navigate more by feel and memory than by sight. When something unexpected appears in their path, a fallen timber, a collapsed section of roof, another pony, they often don't see it until they're right on top of it. Collisions happen. Ponies crash into obstacles, injuring themselves, sometimes fatally. The roof height is a constant danger. The tunnels are built for human convenience, not equine safety. Ponies regularly hit their heads on low-hanging beams, or on sections where the roof dips unexpectedly. Some develop chronic head injuries, walking with their heads permanently lowered, flinching at shadows. Others are killed outright when a particularly low section catches them wrong and breaks their neck or skull. There are stories of ponies that do eventually see daylight again, brought to the surface for the annual holiday or for some special event. These ponies often go blind from the sudden exposure to sunlight. Their eyes, adapted to darkness, can't handle the intensity of natural light. They panic, rearing and bucking, terrified of the open sky and the vast space around them. Some injure themselves or others. Most are quickly led back underground, where the familiar darkness calms them. The surface has become foreign, frightening. The mine is home now. The miners have complicated feelings about the ponies. On one hand, the ponies do work that would otherwise fall to humans. Hauling coal is back-breaking labour, and having a pony do it is a relief. On the other hand, seeing an animal suffer in the same darkness and cold that's destroying you creates a kind of solidarity. The ponies are fellow prisoners, fellow victims of the coal industry's appetite for profit over welfare. Some miners treat the ponies with genuine kindness. They'll share water with them, speak gently, help them when they're struggling with a particularly heavy load. Others see them as competition. The company sometimes cares more about the ponies than the men, because ponies are expensive to replace. A dead pony costs money. A dead miner just opens up a position for the next desperate soul. There are regulations, supposedly, about how ponies should be treated. Maximum weight they should pull, maximum hours they should work, required rest periods, but enforcement is a joke. The mine owners pay lip service to animal welfare while working the ponies to death. Inspectors rarely venture deep enough into the mine to see how the ponies actually live and work. And even when violations are found, the fines are negligible. Cheaper to pay the fine than to actually improve conditions. The underground stables are supposed to be cleaned regularly. In practice, they're mucked out when someone remembers or when the smell becomes unbearable even by mine standards. The ponies stand in their own waste, their hooves developing infections, their legs caked with filth. They're fed oats and hay when available, but during lean times their rations are cut just like the miners' wages. A thin pony can still pull coal. A dead pony cannot. Some ponies develop behavioural problems from the stress and isolation. They become aggressive, biting or kicking anyone who comes near. They become depressed, standing motionless in their stalls, unresponsive to commands. They develop strange repetitive behaviours, weaving back and forth, nodding their heads, pawing at the ground constantly. These are the equine equivalents of mental breakdowns. The mine is driving them insane, just as it drives the humans insane, only the ponies can't articulate their suffering. They can only endure. There's a pony in the eastern section named Blackie. He's been underground for 12 years. 12 years without sunlight, 12 years of pulling coal. He's going blind now, not from age but from chronic eye infections exacerbated by the coal dust and poor ventilation. His front hooves are splayed from years of walking on stone. His coat is dull and patchy, but he still knows his route. Every morning he's hitched to his tubs, and he walks the same path he's walked thousands of times before. He's a ghost horse, living a ghost life in a ghost world beneath the earth. The cruelest part is that the ponies don't understand why this is happening to them. Humans at least can rationalise their suffering. We chose this job, however limited our choices were. We understand the economic forces that drove us underground. We can complain, organise, dream of escape. The ponies have no such understanding. They were born, taken from their mothers, brought into darkness and put to work. This is simply their existence. They don't know there's a world above where horses run in fields and eat grass and feel the sun on their backs. When a pony dies, from injury, exhaustion, or simply giving up, it's dragged to a side tunnel and left. There's no ceremony, no acknowledgement of the years of service. Sometimes the rats get to the body first. Sometimes it just slowly decomposes in the darkness, adding its particular stench to the mine's general atmosphere of death. You pass Blackie on your way to your seam this morning. He's standing hitched to a train of empty tubs, waiting for his driver to lead him to the coalface for loading. He doesn't react to your lamp. Maybe he can't see it anymore. Maybe he's so exhausted he doesn't care. You pause for a moment, reach out, and pat his neck. His coat is rough with coal dust and sweat. He doesn't acknowledge your touch. He just stands there, head low, waiting for the work to begin. In this moment, you and the pony are the same, both trapped, both exploited, both slowly being destroyed by the mine's insatiable hunger. The only difference is that you can tell yourself you're choosing this. The pony doesn't even have that cold comfort. You walk on, leaving Blackie to his darkness. Behind you, you hear the driver arrive, shouting at the pony to move. The harness jangles. The tubs begin to roll. Another day of pulling coal through the dark has begun. For both of you. After hours of back-breaking work, you get a break. Lunch. You sit on a cold rock in the dark, your lamp casting shadows on the tunnel walls, and you open your tin. Inside is the same thing it's been every day for months. Bread, a bit of cheese if you're lucky, maybe some cold bacon or a pasty. The lunch break lasts 30 minutes. 30 precious minutes where you're not swinging a pickaxe, not shoveling coal, not destroying your body for wages. You'd think this would be a relief, a moment of peace in the brutal day. But sitting still in the mine is its own special kind of torture. The moment you stop working, the cold rushes in. Your sweat-soaked clothes become ice packs against your skin. Your muscles, hot from exertion, begin to stiffen and ache. Your body temperature drops rapidly, and within minutes you're shivering violently. You find a relatively dry spot to sit, which is to say a spot that's only slightly wet rather than completely submerged. The stone is cold and damp, and the chill immediately penetrates through your trousers into your flesh. You try to position yourself so you're not sitting in a puddle, but in a mine, that's like trying to stay dry in a rainstorm. Water is everywhere. The best you can do is choose which puddle to sit in. Your hands are shaking as you open your snap tin. Not from cold, though that's part of it, but from exhaustion and the early stages of what will eventually become a permanent tremor. Years of swinging a pickaxe, of gripping tools with vice-like intensity, of repetitive impact travelling up your arms and into your nervous system, it all adds up. Your hands don't work quite right anymore. Simple tasks like opening a tin require concentration. Inside the tin is your lunch, packed by your wife this morning in the pre-dawn darkness. The bread is there, a chunk about the size of your fist, dense and dark. It was stale when you left the house. Now, after 6 hours in your jacket pocket in 40-degree temperatures, it's frozen solid. You tap it against the rock. It makes a sound like knocking on wood. This is not bread. This is a bread-shaped stone. You try to bite into it anyway because you're hungry. You've burned thousands of calories this morning swinging that pickaxe, and your body is demanding fuel. Your teeth can't make a dent. The bread is literally frozen. You hold it in your hands, trying to warm it with body heat, but your hands are cold too. This is a losing battle. Eventually you resort to breaking off small pieces with your fingers and sucking on them until they thaw enough to chew. It's not dignified. But dignity went out the window around the time you started crawling through tunnels on your hands and knees. The cheese, if you have it, is also frozen. It's a small piece, maybe 2 inches square, yellow and waxy. Cheese was expensive, and your wife had to decide between cheese for your lunch or milk for the children's breakfast. She chose the cheese because you're doing hard labour and you need it. The children can drink water. This knowledge doesn't make the cheese taste better. It makes it taste like guilt. You eat it anyway, breaking it into small pieces, letting it slowly thaw in your mouth. If it's a particularly good week, there might be bacon. A single rasher, fried this morning and now cold, congealed and somewhat repulsive. But it's meat, and meat is precious. You eat it carefully, chewing slowly, making it last. The fat coats your mouth, providing calories your body desperately needs. It tastes like salt and grease and survival. It's delicious in the way that only food eaten in desperation can be delicious. Some days there's a pasty. A hand pie filled with meat and vegetables if you're wealthy, or just potatoes and onions if you're not. The pasty is cold and the pastry is tough, but it's substantive. It's a meal you can hold in your hand, eat without utensils, designed specifically for miners who need portable, calorie-dense food. The pasty has a thick, crimped edge that you hold with your dirty hands, eating the rest and discarding the crust. That crust has absorbed coal dust, dirt, and whatever else is on your hands. It's inedible, even by mining standards. You have nothing to drink. Well, that's not entirely true. You have water, technically. It's dripping from the roof, pooling on the floor, running down the walls. But drinking mine water is a gamble. It's contaminated with coal dust, minerals, possibly sulfur, definitely bacteria. Drink it and you might get dysentery. You might get typhoid. You might just get violently sick and lose a day's wages vomiting up everything you've eaten. So most men just endure the thirst, their throats parched and coated with coal dust, their lips cracked, their mouths dry as sandpaper. Some men bring cold tea from home in bottles, but the tea is usually frozen by lunchtime, leaving you with a bottle of tea-flavoured ice. You can't drink it, but you can suck on the bottle opening, getting tiny bits of frozen tea which at least moistens your mouth slightly. It's not refreshing. Nothing about this lunch is refreshing. As you eat, the rats appear. They materialise out of the darkness like furry apparitions drawn by the smell of food. They sit just beyond your lamp's glow, dozens of eyes reflecting red in the darkness, watching you eat. They're patient. They know you'll drop something. You always do. Your hands are numb and clumsy. A crumb falls, and 3 rats sprint forward, fighting over it. You throw a piece of bread crust toward them, just to stop them staring. They swarm it, squeaking and fighting. The show distracts you from your own misery for a moment. The other men in your section are having their lunch too. You can hear them in nearby working faces, the sound of tins opening, the occasional cough, the murmur of conversation. Some men eat alone in silence, too tired to talk. Others gather in small groups, sharing gossip, complaining about the deputy, discussing football scores from last weekend. The conversation is a lifeline, proof that you're still human, still capable of thoughts beyond swing, shovel, push, repeat. Tommy, who works the face adjacent to yours, crawls over for a chat. His face is completely black except for the whites of his eyes and his teeth when he smiles. You probably look the same. You've become coal creatures, more mineral than man. He shows you his lunch, bread and dripping, the same grey paste you've eaten yourself on lean weeks. You commiserate. You compare whose bread is harder. His wins. It's literally frozen solid. He's been using it as a hammer to drive in wedges. This is both funny and deeply depressing. The conversation drifts to the usual topics. How much longer until the shift ends? Whether the company will cut wages again? Whether anyone heard about the roof fall in the western section yesterday. Someone died, apparently. Nobody knows who yet. Could be anyone. Could be you tomorrow. This sobering thought kills the conversation for a moment. Everyone chews in silence, contemplating mortality. Tommy asks if you've heard the rumour about the union organiser coming to speak next week. You haven't. He says there's talk of organising, pushing for better wages, safer conditions. You're sceptical. Every time someone tries to organise, the company finds out and blacklists the ringleaders. Those men never work in mining again, which means they starve. Still, something needs to change. Everyone agrees on that. Whether anyone's willing to risk starvation for change is another question. The 30 minutes pass too quickly. You hear the distant clang of a bell, the signal that lunch is over. The break is done. Time to get back to destroying your body. You pack up your tin, there's never anything left, you've eaten every crumb, and stand up. Your muscles have stiffened during the break, your knees crack like gunshots, your back protests. For a moment you genuinely don't think you can continue. You're exhausted, you're cold, you're in pain. You've already worked 6 hours and you have 6 more to go. But you do continue, because you have to, because there's no alternative. You pick up your pickaxe, position yourself in front of the coalface, and raise your arms for another swing. Your stomach is slightly less empty. That's the only improvement. Everything else, the cold, the dark, the exhaustion, the pain, remains exactly the same. Tommy crawls back to his own face. The other men return to their work. The sound of pickaxes hitting coal echoes through the tunnels, a percussion section of suffering that will continue for 6 more hours. The rats retreat into the shadows, their lunch entertainment over, waiting for dinner time when the crumbs will fall again. You swing the pickaxe, your arms scream, your back aches. Your lunch, such as it was, sits heavy in your stomach, a lump of frozen bread and cold fat slowly being digested. It'll give you energy. Not enough energy, but some. Enough to keep swinging. Enough to keep surviving. The lunch break is over. The second half of your shift has begun. Only 6 more hours until you can crawl back to the surface and stumble home to your freezing house. Only 6 more hours. The darkness down here isn't just an absence of light. It's a presence thick and heavy, pressing in from all sides. Your lamp creates a tiny bubble of weak, flickering illumination, but beyond that, nothing. Just infinite blackness stretching in every direction. It's difficult to explain to someone who's never experienced true darkness what it's like. Not lights off in your bedroom darkness. Not walking outside at night darkness. This is primordial darkness, the kind that existed before humans invented fire, the kind that makes your brain scream that something is fundamentally wrong. Your eyes search desperately for light, for any visual information at all, and find absolutely nothing. The darkness is so complete it has texture. It presses against your eyeballs like a physical substance. Your lamp, your single, fragile Davy lamp, is the only thing standing between you and complete sensory deprivation. The flame inside burns with a weak yellow glow, casting maybe 3 feet of usable light. Beyond that 3-foot circle, the darkness waits. Patient, hungry, ready to swallow you whole the moment your flame dies. And the flame can die. The oil can run out. The wick can become fouled with soot. A draft can blow through and extinguish it despite the protective wire mesh. When that happens, when your lamp goes out, the darkness crashes in like a physical blow. One moment you can see your hand in front of your face. The next moment, nothing. Just infinite blackness in every direction. No sense of up or down. No sense of space. Just void. This has happened to you once before. Your lamp ran out of oil halfway through a shift because someone at the lamp station hadn't filled it properly. The flame sputtered, dimmed, and died. And suddenly you were alone in absolute darkness 900 feet underground. The panic was immediate and overwhelming. Your heart rate tripled. Your breathing became rapid and shallow. Your hands reached out, groping for something, anything, to orient yourself. You touched the wet stone wall and clung to it like it was the only solid thing left in the universe. You had to crawl. Crawl in complete darkness through tunnels you could barely navigate with the light. You kept one hand on the wall, using it to guide yourself, hoping you were heading toward the main roadway where there would be other lamps. Every few feet you'd stop, paralyzed by the thought that you might be crawling toward a shaft opening, toward a 100-foot drop into flooded workings. You couldn't see the floor, couldn't see ahead, couldn't see anything. The crawl took 20 minutes, though it felt like hours. Your hands touched things in the darkness that you couldn't identify. Something wet and soft, something with fur that moved, something sharp that cut your palm. You forced yourself to keep moving because staying still meant dying of cold or going insane or both. When you finally saw the glow of another miner's lamp in the distance, you almost wept with relief. Since then, you check your lamp obsessively. You make sure it's filled, you clean the wick, you check the glass for cracks. You treat that lamp like it's the most valuable thing you own, because down here it is. Your life depends on it. Not metaphorically, literally. Without light you can't work, you can't navigate, you can't survive. But even with a working lamp, the darkness is oppressive. It's not just that you can't see into it, it's that you know what might be in it. Cave-ins can happen silently in unused sections, creating sudden drops or voids. Old workings can flood, creating underground lakes in the darkness. Shafts can open up in floors, hidden until you step into them. The darkness hides all of these dangers, revealing them only when it's too late. The darkness also plays tricks on your mind. After hours of working in a 3-foot bubble of light, your brain starts to malfunction. You see things in the shadows that aren't there. Movement at the edge of your vision, shapes that resolve into nothing when you turn your head. Your lamp creates shadows that dance and writhe on the tunnel walls, and your exhausted, oxygen-deprived brain interprets them as threats, as figures, as ghosts. Some men claim the mines are haunted. They tell stories of seeing miners in old-fashioned clothes, men who died decades ago still working in abandoned sections. They talk about hearing voices calling their names from sealed tunnels. They describe feeling watched in empty spaces, feeling cold spots that have nothing to do with temperature. You don't believe in ghosts. You're a practical man. But down here, in the dark, it's hard to maintain that skepticism. When you're alone and you hear sounds you can't explain, when your lamp flickers and shadows writhe, belief in the supernatural becomes suddenly very reasonable. The darkness amplifies every sound. Dripping water echoes strangely. The creak of timber support sounds like footsteps. The skitter of rats becomes something larger, something threatening. Your mind, deprived of visual input, goes into overdrive interpreting audio information, and it invariably interprets it as danger. Every sound makes your heart rate spike. Every unexpected noise makes you grip your pickaxe tighter, ready to defend yourself against threats that are probably imaginary. Probably. Working in the darkness also distorts your sense of time. With no natural light, no sun to mark the passage of hours, time becomes elastic. Sometimes your shift feels like it's dragging on forever, each minute stretching into eternity. Other times, you look at your pocket watch and realize hours have passed without you noticing, lost in the repetitive rhythm of swing, shovel, push. The darkness erases temporal markers. There's no morning or evening, no dawn or dusk, just the eternal now of swinging a pickaxe in a bubble of lamplight. The darkness affects your psychology in deeper ways too. Studies that won't be conducted for another century will show that prolonged periods in darkness cause depression, anxiety, and sensory hallucinations. But you don't need studies to tell you what you already know. The darkness is making you sick. Not just physically, but mentally. You find yourself becoming irritable, snapping at co-workers, feeling a constant low-grade anxiety that never fully dissipates. Even on the surface, in daylight, you can't shake the feeling that the darkness is still there, waiting to reclaim you. Some miners develop night blindness from years of working in low light. Their eyes, constantly straining to extract visual information from minimal illumination, eventually give up. They become functionally blind in low-light conditions, unable to navigate even a dimly lit room. Ironically, they can still work in the mine, because down here, everyone is essentially blind anyway. You navigate by touch, by memory, by sound. Vision is almost optional. Children who work in the mines, and there are many, sometimes develop stunted growth patterns because their bodies, deprived of sunlight, can't produce vitamin D properly. They become pale, weak, with soft bones that break easily. The darkness is stealing their childhood and their health simultaneously. You see these children during your shift, boys of 10 or 11, small and ghost-like, leading pit ponies or operating ventilation doors in total isolation. They sit in the darkness for 12 hours, seeing no one, their only company the rats and the sound of distant mining. It's a form of sensory deprivation torture inflicted on children for the crime of being born poor. The absolute worst is when you have to work in a section where your lamp is the only light source. No other miners nearby, no other lamps visible in the distance, just you, alone, in a tiny bubble of light surrounded by infinite darkness. The isolation is profound. You become acutely aware that if something happens, if the roof collapses, if you're injured, if your lamp goes out, no one will know. You could die alone in the dark and it might be hours before anyone finds you. Days, if they don't realise you're missing. This has happened. Men have gone missing in the mine, wandered into abandoned sections or fallen down unmarked shafts, and their bodies weren't found for weeks. Sometimes they're never found. They just disappear into the darkness, becoming part of the mine's ghost stories, cautionary tales told during lunch breaks. You try not to think about this. You focus on the coal face in front of you, on the physical task of mining, on anything but the darkness pressing in from all sides. But it's always there, at the edge of your consciousness. The knowledge that you're surrounded by darkness so complete it could hide anything. The awareness that your tiny lamp flame is the only thing holding back an ancient, patient darkness that was here long before humans and will be here long after. The flame flickers. Your heart skips. The flame steadies. You breathe again. And you keep working, keep swinging your pickaxe, keep pretending that the darkness isn't slowly driving you mad. Because what choice do you have? The darkness is part of the job. Like the cold, like the dust, like the constant threat of death. You signed up for this when you became a miner. Or rather, poverty signed you up, and you had no choice but to accept. So you work in the darkness, and you try not to think about what it's doing to your mind. You try not to think about the fact that even when you're home, in bed, in daylight, you can still feel it. The darkness, waiting for you, knowing you'll return, because you always return. Working in a coal mine isn't just hard. It's actively trying to kill you in about 17 different ways. Let's start with roof falls. The tunnels are supported by wooden props and timber, but they're not exactly engineered to modern safety standards. They're basically sticks holding up thousands of tons of rock. The props are wooden posts, maybe 8 inches in diameter, wedged between the floor and the roof with wooden wedges. That's it. That's the entire support system keeping the ceiling from caving in on your head. These props are supposed to be placed every few feet, creating a forest of timber holding up the rock. In practice, they're spaced further apart than they should be, because timber costs money and the company is cheap. They're also often reused from abandoned sections, meaning they're already weakened, already compromised, already one bad day away from failure. You can hear the props working. They creak and groan under the immense weight pressing down on them. This is normal. This is good, supposedly. It means they're bearing the load. But sometimes the creaking gets louder, more frequent, more urgent. That's when you should probably leave. The roof is warning you that it's about to come down. Sometimes you get this warning with enough time to evacuate. Sometimes you don't. Roof falls happen without warning. You're swinging your pickaxe, focused on the coal face, and suddenly there's a sound like thunder, a crack, a rumble, and tons of rock crash down. If you're lucky, it happens in another section. If you're unlucky, it happens right where you're standing. Men are crushed instantly, their bodies pulverized under the weight. Others are trapped, pinned under rock, slowly suffocating or bleeding out while rescue efforts are organized, which could take hours, or days, or never, if the fall is too extensive. You've witnessed a roof fall once. The sound is something you'll never forget. A deep, grinding roar followed by the crash of falling stone and the screams of men caught in it. 3 miners were killed instantly. A 4th was trapped for 6 hours before they could dig him out. His legs were crushed. He died 2 days later from infection. The company paid his widow £5 and moved on. Then there's gas. Multiple kinds of gas, each one eager to kill you in its own special way. Fire damp, which is methane, is colourless and odourless. It seeps out of the coal seam and accumulates in pockets, especially in poorly ventilated areas and near the roof where it rises. When it reaches the right concentration and finds an ignition source, a spark, a flame, a carelessly opened lamp, it explodes. The explosion creates a pressure wave that collapses lungs, ruptures organs and shatters bones. Men die from the pressure before they even have time to burn, but if you survive the initial explosion, congratulations! Now you get to experience the secondary effects. The methane explosion often ignites the coal dust suspended in the air, creating a coal dust explosion that's far more powerful and far-reaching. This fireball roars through the tunnels, following every passage, seeking oxygen, incinerating everything in its path. Men are found afterward, sometimes barely touched by the flames, killed by the pressure wave or by oxygen depletion, Others are burned beyond recognition, reduced to charred husks. After an explosion comes afterdamp, a toxic mixture of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide and nitrogen left behind by the combustion. This gas is invisible, odourless and deadly. It suffocates you slowly. You get dizzy, confused, your limbs stop responding, and then you lose consciousness and die. Rescue workers entering after an explosion have to be careful not to become victims themselves. Many do anyway. The death toll from afterdamp often exceeds the death toll from the initial explosion. Then there's black damp or choke damp, which isn't one gas but a mixture, mostly carbon dioxide and nitrogen with very little oxygen. It accumulates in low spots, in abandoned workings, in areas with poor ventilation. You can't see it. You can't smell it. You just walk into a pocket of it and suddenly you can't breathe. Your body isn't getting oxygen. You feel lightheaded, then you collapse. If someone doesn't drag you out immediately, you die. Simple as that. Flooding is another cheerful way to die. Many mines intersect with underground water sources, streams, aquifers, gas and old flooded workings. Usually these are managed with pumps that run constantly, removing water and keeping the tunnels workable. But pumps fail, or someone accidentally breaks through into old flooded workings, creating a breach. When that happens, water pours in, fast and cold and unstoppable. Men have drowned underground, trapped in rising water with nowhere to go. The water fills the tunnels from the bottom up, driving miners toward higher ground that doesn't exist. They're found later, clustered in the highest points of the mine, drowned in the darkness. Some are found with their faces pressed against the roof, desperately trying to breathe from the last few inches of airspace before the water claimed them. Falls down shafts are always a risk. The mine is riddled with vertical shafts, old exploratory boreholes, ventilation shafts, shafts between different levels. Some are marked, many aren't. In the darkness, with only a lamp casting 3 feet of light, it's easy to walk right into one. You take a step forward, expecting solid ground, and there's nothing. You fall, sometimes hundreds of feet, bouncing off the walls on the way down and land in water or rock or broken timber at the bottom. The impact kills you, or you drown, or you lie there broken and dying until exposure finishes you off. Transportation accidents kill regularly too. The coal tubs running on rails are heavy and unstable. They derail, they collide, they run over men. The boys who push them, the hurriers, are often killed when a tub gets away from them on a slope and crushes them against the tunnel wall. The haulage chains that pull trains of tubs through the main roadways snap regularly, whipping through the air like metal snakes, decapitating or eviscerating anyone unfortunate enough to be in the way. The cage itself is a death trap. The single steel cable holding it can fail. It has failed. In 1862, at Hartley Colliery in Northumberland, the beam of the pumping engine broke and fell down the shaft, blocking it and trapping over 200 men underground. They suffocated slowly while rescue workers tried desperately to clear the blockage. It took days. Everyone died. The entire male population of the village gone. That disaster led to laws requiring 2 shafts for every mine, but accidents still happen. Explosives are another fun hazard. Gunpowder is used to blast through hard rock or bring down large sections of coal. The powder is temperamental, unstable, and often handled by men who are exhausted, cold, and not particularly trained in explosive safety. Premature detonations happen. The blaster lights the fuse and doesn't have time to reach safety, or the fuse burns faster than expected, or there's a hang fire, the charge doesn't explode when it should, and the miner returns to investigate, assuming it's a dud. Then it explodes in his face. Burns from the lamps are common. The lamps are hot, filled with burning oil and easily tipped over. Spill burning oil on yourself in a mine, and you're in for a world of pain. There's no running water to douse the flames, no burn unit to treat you, just other miners slapping at the fire with their hands, possibly making it worse, while you scream. Injuries from tools are constant. The pickaxe, swung thousands of times per shift in cramped spaces with poor visibility, often misses the coal and hits flesh instead. Your own leg, your foot, another miner standing too close. The blade is sharp and heavy. It cuts deep. Men bleed out in the darkness, unable to reach help in time, their lifeblood pooling on the coal-dusted floor. Hernias are so common they're almost expected. Lifting and hauling heavy coal, pushing loaded tubs, working in cramped positions that strain every muscle. Your abdominal wall eventually gives up. Something tears, your intestines push through, and now you have a painful, bulging hernia. Surgery isn't an option. You just work through it, wearing a truss if you can afford one, suffering in silence and hoping it doesn't strangulate. Crushed limbs happen when you're moving heavy equipment or coal tubs in the darkness. You can't see clearly. Something shifts, catches your arm or leg, and the weight is immense. Bones shatter. Flesh is pulverized. If you're lucky, you pass out from shock. If you're unlucky, you remain conscious while someone tries to free you, which involves moving the same heavy object that just crushed you. Many crushed limbs become infected limbs, which become amputated limbs, which become death from sepsis. Then there are the diseases. Black lung we've discussed, but there's also tuberculosis, which spreads rapidly in the close, airless confines of the mine. There's nystagmus, a condition where your eyes develop an involuntary rapid movement from constantly straining to see in low light. There's beat knee and beat hand, inflammation of the joints from constant kneeling and gripping. There's hearing loss from years of noise, pickaxes hitting stone, explosions, the constant rumble of coal tubs and machinery. And finally, there's simple exhaustion. Men work until their bodies give out. They collapse from fatigue, from dehydration, from their hearts simply saying, enough. They're found slumped against the coal face, pickaxe still in hand, dead from the cumulative effects of years of brutal labour. The miracle isn't that men die in the mines. The miracle is that anyone survives. Every shift is a gauntlet of potential death. Every day you go underground, you're gambling that today isn't the day the roof falls, the gas explodes, the water floods in, or the darkness finally claims you. You swing your pickaxe and try not to think about it. But the thoughts are always there, lurking in the back of your mind like the darkness at the edge of your lamp. Today could be the day. This shift could be your last. That creak in the roof could be your warning, if you're lucky enough to get one. The mine is patient. It's been here for millions of years, and it'll be here long after you're gone. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't even notice you. You're just an insect crawling through its body, and sometimes insects get crushed. That's the job. Finally, after 10 or 12 hours underground, the shift ends. You hear the bell, and relief floods through you like warm water. You're still alive. You've survived another day. Now you just have to get back to the surface. The bell clangs through the tunnels, 3 sharp rings that signal the end of the shift. The sound is beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing you've heard all day. It means you can stop swinging the pickaxe. It means you can put down the shovel. It means you can leave this cold, dark hell and crawl back towards something resembling life. Your shoulders, which have been screaming at you for hours, seem to relax slightly at the sound. Your back, twisted and compressed from 12 hours of stooping, allows you to straighten up as much as the low roof permits. But you're not done yet. Not by a long shot. You still have to get out of here, and that's its own ordeal. First, you have to gather your tools, the pickaxe, the shovel, the hand drill. These are your responsibility. If you leave them down here and they get stolen or lost, the cost comes out of your wages, so you collect them, even though your hands can barely grip anymore, even though your arms feel like dead weight hanging from your shoulders. You take one last look at the coal face you've been attacking all day. There's a visible dent in it now, a cavity where you've removed maybe 3 tons of coal. 3 tons. That's your day's work. Your body has been systematically destroyed to extract 3 tons of coal from the earth. The coal will be sold, burned, turned into heat and energy that will warm homes and power factories. You'll get a few shillings for it, minus deductions. The owners will get rich. This is the arrangement. You begin the crawl back through the narrow tunnel that leads from your working face to the main roadway. This tunnel, which you crawled through 12 hours ago in the dark, is still narrow, still wet, still barely high enough to move through. But now you're exhausted. Every movement is harder. Your knees, which have been pressed into wet stone all day, are raw and painful. Your back refuses to cooperate. Muscles seized into knots. You crawl slowly, tools clutched awkwardly, trying not to think about the hundreds of yards between you and the main tunnel. The crawl takes forever. Or maybe it takes 5 minutes. Time has lost meaning. Your world has narrowed to the next hand placement, the next knee movement, the next breath of coal dust. You emerge finally into the main roadway where you can stand. Well, stand hunched over, because the roof is only 6 feet high and you're taller than that. But compared to crawling, standing hunched is luxury. Other miners are making their way toward the pit bottom, a slow procession of exhausted men shuffling through the darkness. Nobody's talking. Everyone's too tired. The only sounds are boots splashing through puddles, the occasional cough, and the distant rumble of the last coal tubs being hauled toward the shaft. The walk to the pit bottom is uphill. Of course it is. The seam you work slopes downward from the main shaft, which means coming back is a climb. With fresh legs in daylight this would be manageable. With legs that feel like rubber after 12 hours of labour, in darkness, while coughing up black phlegm, it's torture. You trudge upward, one foot in front of the other, focusing on the lamp of the man ahead of you, using it as a beacon. Your lamp is running low. The flame is getting smaller, dimmer. You're not sure if there's enough oil left to make it to the surface. If it goes out down here, you'll have to follow the other miners by sound and touch, staying close to them, hoping you don't lose the group in the darkness. Men have gotten lost on the way out, taken a wrong turn in the confusion and exhaustion, ended up in abandoned sections and not been found until someone thought to look for them hours later, or days later, or never. You pass a hurrier, a boy, maybe 12 years old, pushing a final coal tub toward the pit bottom. He's bent almost double, his small frame straining against the weight. His face is black with coal dust, making his eyes look unnaturally white and huge. He doesn't look at you as you pass. He's focused on his task, on surviving his own shift. You remember being that age? Remember starting in the mines as a trapper boy, sitting alone in the darkness operating ventilation doors? You've graduated to mining coal, which means you've graduated to destroying your body more efficiently. Progress. The pit bottom is chaos. Dozens of miners converging from different sections, all trying to load into the cages, all desperate to get to the surface. The deputy's there with his list, checking off names, making sure everyone who went down has come back up. Sometimes the numbers don't match. Sometimes someone's missing. Sometimes they're dead in their working face and nobody's found them yet. Sometimes they're just late, still crawling through the tunnels, and they'll arrive terrified that they've been left behind. You queue up for the cage, shuffling forward slowly as each group of 20 men loads and ascends. The wait feels eternal. You're so close to the surface, so close to freedom, but you're still trapped underground, still breathing coal dust, still in danger. The roof could still collapse. Gas could still explode. You're not safe until you're standing on the surface, breathing fresh air, feeling wind on your face. Finally, it's your group's turn. You shuffle into the cage, pressed against other miners, all of you too tired to care about personal space anymore. The gate clangs shut. The bell rings. And then you're rising, the cage jerking upward, accelerating, the shaft walls rushing past in the lamplight. The ascent feels different from the descent. In the morning you were dropping into darkness, into the unknown. Now you're rising toward light, toward the surface, toward life. The journey takes the same 3 minutes, but it feels faster. Or maybe you're just too exhausted to process time correctly. The cold air blasts down the shaft, hitting you as you rise. It should feel miserable. Instead, it feels like hope. You can see the shaft opening above, a circle of grey light that gets larger as you approach. It's late afternoon in winter, which means it's already getting dark, but compared to the absolute blackness of the mine, the surface looks bright as noon. Your eyes, adapted to lamplight, begin to hurt as natural light increases. You squint, raising a hand to shade your eyes, even though the light is actually quite dim. The cage reaches the surface and stops with a jolt. The gate opens. Men stumble out onto the wooden platform, blinking in the sudden brightness, breathing deeply of air that, while cold and probably full of coal dust from the surface works, is still cleaner than anything you've breathed in 12 hours. You step off the cage and just stand there for a moment. You're above ground, you're alive, you made it through another shift. The relief is overwhelming, almost emotional. Your legs are shaking. Whether from exhaustion or relief, you're not sure. Probably both. Around you, other miners are having similar moments. Some light cigarettes or pipes with shaking hands. Some bend over, hands on knees, coughing violently now that they're in fresh air and their lungs are trying to expel the day's accumulated coal dust. Some just stand there, faces blank, processing the fact that they survived. The banksman is shouting at everyone to clear the platform to make room for the next cage full of miners coming up. You shuffle away, joining the stream of black-faced men heading toward the lamp room to return their lamps, then toward the gates of the colliery. The shift is officially over. The mine has released you, at least for today. You're exhausted beyond description. Every muscle hurts. Your joints are stiff. Your lungs burn. Your hands are torn and bloody. Your back feels like it might never straighten properly again. Your head aches from hours of breathing bad air. You're soaked through with sweat and mine water. You're covered in coal dust from head to toe. You taste coal. You smell like coal. You are coal, temporarily animated. But you're alive. And in mining, alive is a victory. You look up at the sky, grey and overcast, already darkening toward evening. You went down in darkness and came up in darkness. The sun rose and set without you seeing it. An entire day passed underground, and you have nothing to show for it except exhaustion, pain, and whatever meagre wages you'll collect at the end of the week. You start the walk home, joining the stream of miners shuffling through the streets. Nobody's talking, everyone's too tired. You're all just walking corpses animated by momentum and the knowledge that there's a cold house with cold food waiting. It's not much, but it's more than what you had underground. Tomorrow you'll do it all again. The same descent, the same darkness, the same work, the same crawl toward freedom. Every day the same nightmare. Every day you'll wonder how much longer you can keep doing this. Every day you'll go back anyway because the alternative is starvation. But that's tomorrow's problem. Today, you survived. Today, you're walking on the surface, breathing air, seeing sky. Today, you won. Even if winning just means not dying, you made it. Until tomorrow. When you finally emerge from the cage, blinking like a mole, the world hits you all at once. Light, even the grey winter light of northern England, is overwhelming after hours in darkness. You stumble a bit, your legs wobbly, your lungs still burning. Your eyes water uncontrollably. The light, dim as it is, it's winter in England. So, light is a generous term, feels like staring directly into the sun after 12 hours of near-total darkness. You raise a coal-blackened hand to shield your eyes, squinting against the assault of natural illumination. It takes several minutes for your vision to adjust, for your pupils to contract from the wide, desperate dilation they've maintained underground. The air is different up here. It's still cold. It's always cold, but it's moving. Fresh, full of oxygen. You take a deep breath and immediately regret it as your lungs, accustomed to the thick, dust-laden air of the mine, rebel against the sudden influx of relatively clean air. You cough violently, bending over, hacking up black phlegm in quantities that would alarm a doctor if doctors were something you could afford. Other miners around you are doing the same thing, a chorus of coughing that sounds like a tuberculosis ward at feeding time. The sounds of the surface world are startling after the muffled, echoing acoustics of the mine. Birds are making noise, even in winter. The wind is howling across the pit yard, rattling the corrugated iron roofs of the outbuildings. Voices sound different up here, clearer, less distorted. The rumble of the winding gear, the hiss of steam from the engine house, the clatter of coal being loaded into railway cars. It's all louder, more immediate, more real. You can see the sky. Even though it's grey, overcast, threatening rain or possibly snow, it's infinite. It stretches above you in all directions. Vast and open, and after 12 hours in a space where the roof was never more than a few feet above your head, the openness is almost frightening. You feel exposed, vulnerable, like something might swoop down from that enormous grey expanse and carry you off. It's irrational, but your brain has spent all day in a confined space, and it needs time to readjust to the concept of open sky. The temperature on the surface is actually colder than it was in the mine. The wind cuts through your wet clothes, which are soaked with sweat and mine water, and you start shivering immediately. Underground, you were cold but relatively sheltered from the wind. Up here, the wind is vicious, a knife-edge blast coming off the North Sea, and it finds every gap in your clothing, every wet patch, every exposed inch of skin. You look down at yourself and realise you're completely black. Your hands, your clothes, your boots. Everything is covered in coal dust. You can feel it on your face, caked in layers, making your skin tight and itchy. Your hair is stiff with it. It's under your fingernails, in your ears, probably in places you don't want to think about. You're more coal than man at this point, a walking statue of compressed ancient plant matter. Around you, dozens of other miners are emerging from the pit, each one looking just as black, just as exhausted, just as relieved to be alive. You all look the same. Black-faced ghosts, our features erased by the coal dust except for the whites of your eyes and your teeth when you cough or grimace. Race, age, even identity become irrelevant when everyone is uniformly black. You're all just coal creatures, temporarily released from the Earth's bowels. The pit yard is busy even at the end of the shift. Coal is being loaded into railway cars. Equipment is being moved. The next shift, the night shift, poor bastards, is gathering near the cage, preparing to descend into the same darkness you just escaped. You make brief eye contact with one of them, a young man you don't know, and you see in his face the same resignation you feel every morning. He's about to descend into hell. You just climbed out. In 12 hours, you'll trade places. You queue up at the lamp room to return your lamp. The lampman takes it, checks your tally number, marks you off his list. Your lamp is almost empty, the flame barely flickering. You cut it close. Another 10 minutes, and you would have been in darkness. The lampman doesn't comment. He's seen it all. He just takes the lamp, sets it aside for refilling, and waits for the next miner. You're officially done now, free to go home. But home is a 30-minute walk and your legs are barely functioning. You start the trudge through the pit yard toward the gates, your boots squelching with every step. They're full of water, have been for hours, and your feet are wrinkled, pale, completely numb. You won't be able to feel your toes until sometime tomorrow if you're lucky. The gates of the colliery feel like the gates of a prison, which is appropriate because that's essentially what they are. You pass through them, and suddenly you're in the regular world. The streets of the mining town, narrow and cobbled and just as grim as they were this morning. Rows of terraced houses, all identical, all grey with coal dust. The corner shop where you'll never have enough money to clear your debt. The pub where you'll spend Friday night trying to forget that Monday morning is coming. Other miners walk alongside you. A silent procession of exhausted men heading home. Some peel off down side streets toward their own houses. Some continue walking in the same direction you're going. Neighbours you see every day but never really talk to because what's there to say? Nice shift today, only nearly died twice. The camaraderie exists, but it's mostly silent. Understood rather than expressed. Children are playing in the street, even in the cold and gathering darkness. They scatter as the miners approach, not out of fear but out of habit, clearing the way for the black-faced men trudging home. Some of the children are miners themselves, or will be soon. Boys of 8 or 9 who will start as trappers or hurriers next year, beginning their own journey toward early death by coal dust. You pass a woman beating a rug outside her door trying to get the coal dust out. It's a futile effort. The dust is everywhere, constantly replenished by the colliery, by the miners walking past, by the coal smoke from every chimney. She might as well try to hold back the tide. She looks up as you pass, her face weary, and you recognise her. Her husband died in the mine 3 months ago. Roof fall. She's taking in washing now, trying to support 3 children. She'll probably have to send the oldest boy to the pit soon. The cycle continues. The walk home seems longer than it did this morning. Your body is shutting down, exhaustion catching up now that you're out of immediate danger. Your legs move mechanically, one in front of the other, muscle memory carrying you forward, because conscious thought seems beyond you right now. You're just a body in motion, guided by familiarity toward home. The sky is darkening rapidly. It's maybe 4 in the afternoon, but winter in northern England means darkness comes early. You went underground in darkness and emerged in darkness. The sun rose and set without you seeing it. A full day passed, birds flew, trees swayed, life happened, and you experienced none of it. You were underground, in the dark, swinging a pickaxe at coal that was old when dinosaurs walked the earth. You can see your house now, the familiar grey brick, the door that doesn't quite close properly, the window with the crack you keep meaning to fix. Smoke is coming from the chimney, a thin grey thread that means your wife has managed to get a fire going. There will be warmth inside, relatively speaking. There will be food, such as it is. There will be children who need feeding, a wife who needs you to not die, and a bed that's somehow less comfortable than the rock you sat on during your lunch break. But it's home. It's the surface. It's not the mine. And right now, that's enough. You reach the door, push it open with a hand that's still trembling slightly from exhaustion, and step inside. The warmth, minimal as it is, hits you like a blessing. Your wife looks up from the stove, takes in your black face and wet clothes, and doesn't comment. She's seen this every day for years. She knows. You're home, you're alive, you survived another shift. Tomorrow you'll do it all again, but tomorrow isn't here yet. Right now, there's warmth, food, and the knowledge that for the next few hours, nobody's expecting you to swing a pickaxe or risk death for coal. You sit down heavily on the bench by the door and start trying to remove your boots. Your fingers, stiff and damaged, can barely manage the laces. Your wife comes over and helps, not saying anything, just kneeling down and unlacing your boots with practiced efficiency. She pulls them off, and water pours out. Your socks are black, soaked, barely recognizable as fabric. You're home. The mine has released you, and for now, for tonight, that's victory enough. Here's the thing about coal mining. You end every shift looking like you've been dipped in ink. Coal dust covers every inch of you. Your face, your hands, your hair, even your eyelids. It's in your ears. It's under your fingernails. You taste it when you breathe. The reasonable response would be to take a bath, to wash off the day's accumulated filth, to scrub away the coal dust and sweat and mine water, to emerge clean and human-shaped again. But this is 1880s Northern England, and reasonable things cost money you don't have. A proper bath is a luxury reserved for people who aren't you. First, there's the question of where to bathe. Your house doesn't have a bathroom. Bathrooms are for the wealthy, for people with indoor plumbing, for people whose homes have more than 2 rooms. You have a kitchen living room downstairs and a bedroom upstairs. That's it. No bathroom, no tub, no running water, just a bucket and your slowly dying hope for human dignity. To bathe, you need a tin tub. If you're fortunate enough to own one, and many families aren't, it's a shallow metal basin, maybe 3 feet in diameter, that normally hangs on a nail outside the back door. Your wife brings it in and sets it in front of the fire, which is barely burning because coal, ironically, costs money even when you mine it all day. Now you need water, lots of water. The tub holds maybe 10 gallons when full, which isn't enough to properly submerge an adult but is enough to sit in and splash around pathetically. You don't have running water, so every drop has to be hauled from the communal pump at the end of the street. That's 10 gallons, 8 pounds per gallon, 80 pounds of water that someone has to carry in buckets. Usually that someone is your wife or one of your older children. They make multiple trips, hauling heavy buckets through the cold streets while you sit by the fire trying to convince your muscles to unclench. Each trip takes several minutes. The whole process takes half an hour or more, and this is assuming the pump isn't frozen, isn't broken, and doesn't have a queue of other families also trying to get water. But wait, we're not done. That water is freezing cold, literally freezing, or close to it. You can't bathe in that. Well, you could, but you'd probably die of shock, and you've already risked death enough today. So the water needs to be heated. This means filling pots and kettles and setting them on the stove or hanging them over the fire, waiting for them to heat up, then pouring the hot water into the tub and hoping it doesn't immediately cool down in the frigid air of your house. Heating 10 gallons of water requires significant fuel. Fuel costs money. You're using coal to heat water to wash off coal dust that you got from mining coal that you had to buy. The irony is not lost on you, but irony doesn't make you cleaner. The entire process, fetching water, heating it, preparing the tub, takes over an hour. An hour of labour after 12 hours of labour. By the time the bath is ready, you're so tired you can barely keep your eyes open. But you're also filthy, so you strip down and climb into the tub. The tub is too small. You're a grown man, and this tub was designed for a medium-sized child. You can't lie down. You can't stretch out. You sit hunched over, knees bent, your body folded into an uncomfortable crouch. Trying to scrub yourself while water sloshes over the sides onto the floor your wife will have to mop up later. The water, which was hot when it was poured, is already cooling. The room is cold. The fire barely provides heat. The water's warmth is being sucked away by the frigid air. and within minutes you're sitting in a lukewarm water, shivering, trying to hurry through the washing process before the water becomes ice. You scrub with a rough cloth and a bar of harsh lye soap that your wife makes from animal fat and wood ash. The soap doesn't lather well. It's abrasive, stripping away not just coal dust but also skin. Your hands, already torn and blistered from work, sting as the soap finds every cut and scrape. But you scrub anyway because the coal dust doesn't come off easily. The coal dust has been ground into your pores. It's not just on your skin, it's in your skin. You scrub your face and the water turns black immediately. You scrub your arms, your chest, your legs, and each area contributes its own cloud of black to the water. Within minutes, you're sitting in water that looks like ink. You're not getting cleaner at this point. You're just redistributing the filth. Your hair is a disaster. Coal dust has turned it into a stiff black mat. You dunk your head in the filthy water and try to scrub your scalp, but the soap doesn't penetrate well, and you're working blind, trying to feel whether you're making progress. Probably not. Your hair will be grey-black for days, coal dust permanently embedded in it, until it grows out or you shave your head, which some miners do because it's easier than trying to keep hair clean. Your fingernails are black. They're always black. The coal dust gets under them and stays there no matter how much you scrub. You've given up trying to clean them. They'll be black until the day you die, and probably after. When they bury you, you'll have black fingernails. It's part of being a miner, a permanent mark of your occupation. After maybe 10 minutes in the tub, the water is too cold and too filthy to continue. You stand up, water streaming off you, still partially black but cleaner than you were. Your wife hands you a rough towel, the family only has 2, and they're both threadbare and scratchy. And you dry yourself by the fire, shivering violently. Looking down at yourself, you're disappointed but not surprised. You're still grey. The coal dust has stained your skin a permanent dingy colour. Your knees are black. Your elbows are black. The creases in your skin, the calluses on your hands, all still black. You'll never be truly clean again. The coal has claimed you. Here's the really depressing part. In many families, that bath water isn't thrown out. Water is too precious, too much work to fetch and heat. So the bath water gets reused. Father goes first because he's the dirtiest, then maybe the older boys who also work at the pit, then the younger children, then last of all the wife and daughters. By the time the women bathe, they're climbing into water that's cold, black, and probably contains things that shouldn't be identified. They're not getting clean, they're just getting wet in cold soup. Some families don't bother with baths at all during winter. It's too much work, too much fuel, too much water, and frankly too cold. They just don't wash. They wipe themselves down with a damp cloth occasionally. They change their shirts if they have a spare one. But a full bath? That might happen once a week if they're lucky, once a month if they're not. The result is that everyone in mining communities smells. Not just a little, a lot. The combination of coal dust, sweat, unwashed bodies, and damp clothes creates an aroma that's distinctive and overwhelming. You stop noticing it because everyone smells the same. Your nose adapts. But visitors to mining towns always comment on the smell, the thick, organic, coal-tinged funk that hangs over everything. You put on your nightshirt, the only item of clothing you own that's not stiff with coal dust, and look at the tub of black water, the wet floor, the damp towel. Your wife will have to deal with this. She'll have to haul the water back outside, bucket by bucket, and throw it in the street where it'll freeze into a black ice slick. She'll have to mop the floor. She'll have to hang the wet towel to dry, even though there's nowhere warm enough to actually dry it. You've been home for 2 hours and you're exhausted from the effort of getting marginally clean. You're still cold, still achy, and now you're also damp, which makes everything worse. The bath, which should have been refreshing, has just made you more miserable. This is the reality of mining. Even basic human hygiene, washing yourself after work, is a monumental task requiring significant labour and resources. Nothing is easy, nothing is comfortable. Everything costs more than you can afford. You're cleanish now, as clean as you're going to get. Your skin is still grey. Your fingernails are still black. Your lungs are still full of coal dust that no amount of external washing will touch. But at least you don't look like you just crawled out of a coal seam. Well, you look a little less like that. Tomorrow you'll do it all over again. 12 hours underground, getting covered in coal dust, coming home black, attempting to wash off the day. It's a cycle that never ends, a Sisyphean task where the boulder is your own body and the hill is basic cleanliness. You give up thinking about it. There's no point. You're as clean as you're going to get. Time for dinner. So, how was your day? You woke up in a frozen house at 4 a.m, ate grey porridge that tasted like defeat, walked through streets paved with frozen filth, descended nearly 1,000 feet into absolute darkness, crawled through tunnels barely big enough for a child, swung a pickaxe for 12 hours while your lungs slowly filled with coal dust, shared your workspace with rats the size of cats and ponies that will never see daylight again, risked death by roof collapse, explosion, flooding, or about 14 other creative methods climbed back to the surface just in time to miss the sun entirely, walked home in the dark and attempted to wash off the day's coal in a tin tub filled with water that turned black within seconds, and tomorrow you'll do it all over again. This was the reality for coal miners in northern England during the Victorian era. Not the romanticised version you see in period dramas, but the actual grinding, brutal reality. These men, and children, let's not forget the children, destroyed their bodies systematically, shift after shift, year after year, just to keep their families from starving. They didn't do it for glory or adventure. They did it because the alternative was death by poverty instead of death by coal dust, and at least mining paid a few shillings. The conditions weren't just difficult. They were deliberately cruel, engineered by a system that valued coal more than the humans who extracted it. The mine owners knew the dangers. They knew about the methane, the roof falls, the lung disease. They just didn't care enough to fix it. Profits came first, always. The miners were expendable, replaceable, and most importantly, desperate enough to accept whatever conditions were offered. But here's what's extraordinary. They survived. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. They endured conditions that would break most modern people within hours. They adapted to darkness, to cold, to constant danger. They developed a resilience born of absolute necessity. They created communities built on mutual suffering and shared survival. They looked out for each other because no one else would. And slowly, painfully, over decades, they fought back. They organised unions despite the threat of blacklisting. They went on strike despite their families going hungry. They demanded safety regulations, shorter hours, better pay. They pushed and pushed until conditions improved, until laws were passed, until mining became less of a death sentence and more of a dangerous job. Their fight gave us the labour rights we have today. The 8-hour workday, workplace safety regulations, child labour laws, the weekend. Every time you complain about your job, remember that your great-great-grandfather probably worked twice as long in conditions 100 times worse for a fraction of the pay. So tonight, as you drift off to sleep in your warm bed with your clean sheets and your indoor plumbing, maybe spare a thought for the coal miners of Victorian England. The men who descended into darkness every day so that others could have light and heat. The men who breathed coal dust so that factories could run and homes could be warm. The men who gave their lungs, their backs, their lives to fuel an industrial revolution that they barely benefited from. They didn't have a choice. You do. And that difference, that ability to choose, to leave, to demand better, that's their legacy. That's what they fought for, even if they didn't live to see it. The mines are mostly closed now. The coal seams played out. The industry moved on, and the communities built around them slowly faded. But the memory remains. In the black lung that killed men decades after they left the pit. In the crooked spines of elderly miners who never stood straight again. In the stories passed down through generations about great-grandfathers who worked underground and somehow survived. They were ordinary men doing extraordinary things just to get by. They weren't heroes in the classical sense. They were just people trying not to die, trying to feed their families, trying to maintain some shred of dignity in conditions designed to strip it away. And they succeeded. Not comfortably, not easily, but they survived. They persisted. They endured. So before you drift off tonight, warm and safe and clean, maybe whisper a quiet thank you to those soot-covered ghosts who crawled through darkness so that future generations wouldn't have to, who breathed poison so that others could breathe freely, who accepted suffering so that suffering might one day end. Because history isn't just kings and battles and grand events. It's also coal miners at 4 a.m, swinging pickaxes in the dark, coughing up black phlegm, and somehow finding the strength to do it all again tomorrow. Sleep well, they rarely did.